start the pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're gonna start with presentations by the Violet students. So
It's
take
my
it away, Kim.
pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Rich Meek, who is our Violet Social Studies teacher. And as the board may have received in the report, he was recently named as the VFW State Teacher of the Year for patriotism. If you walk through the hallways on your way out, take a look at a lot of the patriotic flags you'll see and artifacts. He takes a lot of pride in that and in teaching community service to the kids. But I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's going to introduce you to the 3 8th graders, and they're going to talk about their American Heritage trip.
Yeah, so I have 3 of my 8th graders who traveled with me on the American Heritage Tour trip back in the fall. I have Brooklyn, I have Tom, and I have Aubrey, so you guys like joining me up here. And we have a little presentation about our experiences on this trip. So just a little bit of background, this trip of the American Heritage Tour has been going on since '76 in the Fall Mountain School District, and unfortunately, the COVID years kind of killed it. And I didn't like that. I didn't want to be the person in charge when the system completely collapsed and we no longer had it. So with the support of my students and the teachers here at Vilas, we decided to get our own trip going, and we had that meeting back in the fall, or was it late summer, where we talked about exactly what the trip was going to be. So these 3 students agreed, with only a little bit of arm twisting, to have them talk about their experiences and tell you that it was hopefully well worth it in their opinions. Because, I mean, I can talk about it as much as I want and say it's a great trip, but if you get it from them, then hopefully you'll believe me. So we just, if you take a look, we have a picture of Tom right there. And Tom, what are you doing there?
I was helping the luggage on to the van or bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speak up really loud, Tom. I can't hear you.
We also have people at home who are listening in, so.
All right, what I said was that this was me and the kid next to me, Ryan, we were putting everyone's luggage into the bus before leaving to Philadelphia.
Yeah, so while we were traveling, students had responsibilities while we were on the road, either loading or unloading the bus. We also had groups of kids who were in charge of cleaning the bus, so we tried to emulate the YMCA program as much as possible, so that kids took ownership of while we were traveling. So also the bus, as you can see, which is a coach bus, wasn't trashed. Because we're gonna be living on that bus for an entire year. So, or not a year, it's even like a long time and it's What is this photo?
As you can see, all of us are eating our breakfast. So, after we clocked into our hotel, we slept and we woke up and we had a time to go to the table to get our breakfast, which was 6 a.m. And we went down and got our breakfast from like a little like buffet looking thing. And we sat down and ate, and Mr. Rick took pictures of them.
Yeah, it's a Thanksgiving dinner. It was amazing because in years past, I had to do a lot of prodding and we had to go up to rooms, the kids that forgot to wake up on time. And on the very first day, all 35 of our kids came down on time. And punctuality is incredibly important because if they're on time, that means we get to push off and do other things that day. And we didn't have to hound anybody. And pretty much that was the way it was the entire week, which was fantastic. There was 35 students between 7th and 8th grade, and there was 3 chaperones. That's Mr. Crawford, our special ed teacher here at Vilas, and Ms. Civilian, our reading teacher. So we had a lot of teacher turnout, and it was very beneficial to have staff members go on this trip as well. We went in October from the 17th to the Friday, which was the 21st, and we went to different destinations such as Philadelphia, Gettysburg, Valley Forge, Washington, D.C., Arlington National Cemetery, and Mount Vernon, which was an additional add-on, which was George Washington's home. It was fantastic. So, you'd like to talk about Philadelphia?
In Philadelphia, the first picture is the Liberty Bell. And then that's Betsy Ross's house.
You want to tell them what they're doing on the ground? and what the movie
Okay,
call?
so there was a, like, scavenger hunt where we could take pictures to get extra credit. So we were trying to take a picture of the spider in there.
Which spider?
It's like a crack. right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a device that they put inside the bell, like a corkscrew that holds the bell together. They just call it the spider because it has multiple legs. So the kids had to get on their hands and knees and get pictures underneath, and we got yelled at for it when the park ran. They were sticking their cameras underneath to get pictures of it, but they didn't get too angry at us, so it was pretty okay. We got Betsy Ross's house, you're saying?
And then, she sold me everything.
She did, yeah.
And then the mint, the US Mint, which like makes coins and,
Did we get to see coins being made that day?
yeah, we did. So there was like big windows in there and you go inside and you can, there's like different departments with like the different types of coins.
Unfortunately, they don't let us take pictures inside.
Yeah, you're not allowed to take pictures.
Yeah.
And then,
For example.
what is
That's Betsy Ross' house, just to get that connect from Independence Hall in the center. I'm lucky enough to go inside there. And we're actually gonna be, this week and the next week, we're actually be talking about the documents written inside the Independence Hall, which is the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution, which is gonna be very beneficial because they've actually been in the room and read the place. I'm gonna talk about Arlington.
Sure, so Arlington was a giant cemetery for all types of wars. I believe it's my great grandfather who's buried there. It's not up there, but I did the presentation on the memorial for the Apollo 1 crash, I believe,
Challenger.
and then the Challenger crash, one going in, one going out. And then over there, they're putting up the James, Isaac, Lydia, and that's Paul, right?
Oh, with the smaller, he doesn't have
Yeah.
one anymore.
He was putting up, or they were putting up the wreath for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And for the image in the middle, that is the 9/11 memorial for, I can't remember, but
The Pentagon.
yeah, but wasn't there something with if one's going in where people who died
Right.
in the Pentagon and one's going out where people, I don't know.
They died either on the plane or in the Pentagon attack itself. So it depends on how that stainless steel tail is pointing. If it's pointing towards the Pentagon, it was victims on the plane. And if it was pointing away, it was people who died at the Pentagon itself. We also have Maisie Baker, another eighth grader, who is placing a Texas flag at Audie Murphy's grave. He's the highest decorated combat veteran of World War II. And I would like to point out the tall redheaded young man in the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That is a student who broke his leg right before we traveled. And you can see him on the picture below. Well, he's on crutches. And if you notice, he is not using crutches as he's at the tomb because he did not want to look weak in front of the soldiers. So he walked downstairs and walked back up without his crutches. And he was in pain after that, but I couldn't convince him to use it. So it was a very, very powerful experience for all the students involved. Rick, you want to talk about DC?
So, we did see the White House, the Washington Monument, and as you can see, Paul Young is doing a presentation about the
National Art.
yeah, the National Archives.
It looks very similar to the Supreme Court building.
Yeah, I was thinking. And here is some of our eighth graders on the bottom of the Washington Monument spread out with our arms open. So we're trying to make a little line. Didn't work out, but
The theater, you remember what the theater was called? That was Ford's Theater, and what happened then?
The assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, so it was a very powerful trip. Students did reports and projects on the different places that we went to see, so they had some background knowledge before we actually went to go see it. So Paul's doing a presentation that he made while at school for this trip, so there's background information given to them by the students themselves. We'll talk about the night tours.
Okay, so this is the Lincoln Memorial right here. And, okay, so this, you're standing at the Lincoln Memorial right here, and then over there is the World War II Memorial, and then that's Washington Monument. And then,
Behind, yeah, behind.
yeah, behind them. And then this is the Jefferson Memorial with a big statue of
Jefferson.
Jefferson. Yeah, it was-
Why was it your favorite?
I don't know. One of the scavenger hunts was like, there's like tobacco on a split or something.
Tobacco and corn with a stack of books. Do you
Yeah.
Remember why?
No.
It's because he believed that this country's future was based on farming and education. That's why you have that next to the statue.
Also with the memorial was the I Have a Dream, or where Martin Luther King's stood and made a speech.
So it was very neat doing the night tours because everything was lit up like Christmas and it was very powerful. Unfortunately, I didn't get any pictures of us while at the different war memorials. So we also went to the Vietnam Wall. We also went to the Korean War Memorial. We went to FDR's at night, you know, it was very, very powerful, and MLK's as well. So very packed nights as well. Your feet are probably still recovering.
It was very cold.
It was cool. Very October, it was very cold. We also went to the Smithsonian's. Tom, want to talk about that? Your ramrod picture there?
Yeah, so. I don't remember much of the Smithsonian, because I didn't get much through it, a lot of it, but, yeah, I definitely.
That was in October.
We saw, Evil Knievel's bike.
Okay. And you, I remember you were disappointed that you didn't get to see the original Kermit because it wasn't on display.
Oh.
It was. You always
was,
see
but
that.
that's the big painting of it though.
That's the Air Space Museum,
Yeah.
but there's multiple Smithsonian, remember?
Yeah.
What about the Botanical Gardens? You remember that?
My favorite part was probably the canopy part where you could go up the bow. So it felt like I was wearing more than just a sweatshirt. I felt like I was wearing layers. Yeah.
And then we ended our trip going to Gettysburg, and Brooke, you want to talk about that painting that you guys are looking at? You remember looking at that painting?
Yes, because remember that like bunch of like the sound effects and you were there was like a huge painting, it was like a 360 painting, and it showed like all like the conflict that was happening during that time, and it was really cool because like there was a bunch of sound effects like of like war happening, so you're standing there and you're in it, and like there's a bunch of like different lights, and so like when like a bomb hit or something, the lights would turn red, and it was like very like impactful. It was awesome.
It was painted back in the 1800s to do the closest depiction of the fight that they could at the time.
There was a little like painting of a guy holding a soldier, sword or something, like behind a tree.
And he painted.
And he was the
himself.
one that painted it, and he painted himself in it.
Very good. And that was our tour, just trying to get the kids to understand that learning should happen outside the classroom as much as possible, as well as in books. It's incredibly important. I'm very happy that you guys had a good time on it. And that's our
I
presentation.
just wanted to recognize again the three kids, Aubrey Martin from Langdon, Tommy Planky from Langdon, and Brooklyn Gay from Elsted, and of course their wonderful social studies teacher that worked really hard a lot on his own time to make this trip happen. So it's very successful.
We're back here. All right, so we're moving on to the AEM operation procedures presentation. Oh,
I'm screaming into the parking lot of high school.
Something I had to introduce, today I have Sarah Valley, she's our speech language pathologist and also our speech tech, specialist. And Emma Kabeski is one of our student service coordinators. They're both going to do a presentation today on accessible educational materials and assistive technology. I've got some handouts I'm going to hand out I think we're getting things correct. And, okay.
We're moving these two things. The punch out, the door there,
I didn't, I haven't done anything. Yeah, no.
I'm waiting. So, while I'm waiting, we were presented to you all, I think it was in April of last year. So we're about a year out from then, and wanted to just kind of give you an update and also make a request of you. So we still have most of our same members as we had last year. It's gonna let me change it. But how do I, well, it's not changing the screen. Okay. So we have a nice team of people from across different parts of the district that all sit on this committee. And we have been working with CAS, which is an organization out of Massachusetts that works on accessibility and technology. And we've also been working with the National AIM Center. So for those of you who don't, ooh, what did I just do? I went to try to go. Am I going the wrong way? Ah, I see. Sorry. So what is AIM? AIM is accessible educational materials. And so essentially, this is what we are talking about when we talk about making sure that print and technology-based materials are accessible to all people. So people who have hearing disabilities, people who maybe have print disabilities, which could be because they have a learning disability or a vision disability, or also students who maybe struggle with using their hands, so they can't carry books or turn pages. And so making sure that we have ways to allow all of our students to access the same content. And then accessible formats can be all kinds of different formats. They might be audio, braille, large print, tactile graphics, or digital text. And so we have some questions that we've been talking a lot about. These are just some visual of examples. And then we also have been talking a lot about assistive technology. And so we can have all of those formats, but how are students accessing those? So as you obviously all know, we're a one-to-one Chromebook district. And so we have software on all of the Chromebooks for all of the students that's built in that allows them to listen to text if it's digital, and it also supports them in writing. We have different ways that they can access text. So for example, Bookshare has digital versions of all textbooks and including math, as well as any novels or different things that students are reading. We have students who might struggle with reading, who we get the driver's license manual, and so they can listen to it and learn that way. So there's a variety of different ways that students can access. And so, and then we also use different types of assistive technology, FM systems where students can listen, all of those kinds of things. We kind of presented this to you all last April, where we've been working on assistive technology and accessible educational materials for a number of years with both the state. So we started in 2016. And we worked with the New Hampshire DOE and CAS. And at that point, we created with a summer and some summer endowment money, assistive technology website that's on the Fall Mountain website that has a variety of things. And if you haven't checked it out, you should. It's also been updated with professional development opportunities for staff. And then we also had a second cohort from 2019 to 21, and we worked on understanding the quality indicators for assistive technology, which are sort of the guidelines for how do we make sure that our students with disabilities have access, and that our staff know how we can consider what might work best for our different students, because we can't just throw the same thing at all students. We need to be thinking about the student and have it be based on what their needs are.
And then in 2020, we started working with this AIM cohort. So, and this is, we have another year and a half with them. And so, this is sort of our committee timeline. The first year, we did a whole lot of learning. We did monthly trainings on the different quality indicators for accessible educational materials. They had videos. We had live stream meetings with the national people in the state. We came and presented to you. And then we really worked hard over the summer to create a procedure, because one of the quality indicators, as you'll see, is around having a solid procedure so that we can do this consistently and we don't have pockets of excellence, but we have a whole district of excellence. And so we worked on that over the summer. And then, as you know, it takes time to get on agendas. So we were able to get into the A team in December to present that, and they had approved that. And now we are here meeting with you. The A team approved the procedure that we're going to present to you in January, and now we're going to officially request that you guys approve that. And then our hope is to be sharing this out with the whole district.
So these are the 7 quality indicators that we looked at in the beginning, and then we chose the top coordinated system, time provision in a timely manner, and written guidelines as our focus. As our focus for our group. So this is what kind of led us to the procedure that we're presenting today. So the coordinated system, the agency has a coordinated system for provision of appropriate, high quality, accessible materials and technologies for all learners with disabilities who require them. So based on these, we had to say, do we have this? Do we not? What do we do? So that was one we focused on, whether or not it's in a timely manner. The agency supports the acquisition and provision of appropriate, accessible materials and technologies in a timely manner. So in the classroom, are the students who need it, getting them day to day. So means that the learners who require accessible materials and technologies receive them at the same time. So anytime a book is being handed out, can they use it on their computer? Are we meeting that? So we're looking at that as another one. And then the third one that we're focusing on is the written guidelines. Agency develops and implements written guidelines related to effective and efficient acquisition, provision, and use of accessible materials and technologies. Written guidelines includes the roles, knowledge, skills, actions, alignment, and coordination required for delivery of accessible materials and technologies in the timely manner. So we felt that those top 3 were enough where we could start and hit the main points for where we wanted to go and how are we going to do that. That leads us to our next steps. And the biggest one today is the approval of the AIM procedures, which has been handed out.
Yeah, so you have that. And I know you also were all sent a little video in advance about what, all this stuff is. But so that's what we're doing, is we're here to share that with you and ask you guys to look at it. We understand that the process doesn't involve you saying, yes, we're going to approve it right this minute. But we wanted to present that to you so that we could move forward with implementing it and sharing it out in all of the different school staff meetings and working with all of the different content teachers to understand what that means and how we support them, how our AIM team supports them in making it possible so it doesn't feel overwhelming to
Getting
them.
that knowledge out there.
Are you tracking usage and?
Are we tracking usage? So we have, and so yes and no, in that I'm working on narrowing down that data. So we have a program called Snap and Read that reads out loud everything that is on a computer. So students can use that to access documents that teachers have put into Google Classroom. And it tracks the different students who are using it, how many hours they have spent reading, and then you can also pull up individual data for individual students, how many hours they've spent using it, what grade level they have listened to. So for example, we have part of the software, without getting too detailed, has a leveler. So if a 10th grade teacher gives students an article, there's a button they can click and it will lower the vocabulary level for students. So, and it tells in the top corner what grade level it's at. So it also tracks how much they listen to a different grade level text. Have I compiled all of that? No, not yet. But we can pull that data. And we also have, software that supports writing, similar to like when you're texting and it has word prediction. And it will track how many students have used it, how many words each student has written using it, and how long it took them to do that. So yes, we can do that. And then Bookshare is where we assign students books. So for example, at the high school, Meg Sears English 9 class that has a lot of students who have reading disabilities. We know what books she's going to be using. And so she has a classroom. I have students who've been signed up for Bookshare, which is a process. We have to certify that they have a disability and need that. And then I can assign them those books. So I have a list, all of the students in there, and it shows what books they've read in their reading list. So there's about 120 students using Bookshare currently.
That's great.
It's been a lot of work to get them all up and trained and get the system of having different classroom teachers shoot that email saying, hey, can you assign this book to the student kind of thing. So I can pull all of that data.
I was just wondering if you were, and maybe, we're looking at data for the strategic plan, looking at the alternate, and how we can incorporate stuff like this and track this kind of stuff to make sure that, kids are using it. Right?
So as a separate piece, just so you have this information, before we decide to assign students books, because we don't want to assign a student who has a listening comprehension at 4th grade, a 10th grade book, right? So we also have been able to purchase, in that 2019 or earlier cohort, we did a trial of a piece of software called the UPAR, which is the Universal Protocol for Reading accommodations for reading. And so students on their Chromebook log in with their Gmail account, and they take a comprehension assessment. So there's a silent reading comprehension, and it asks questions at the end, and then they can listen. And then it gives you grade levels, which is really helpful for presenting. So when we go to like CST process, if someone's referring someone to be tested for a reading disability, we want to see that first, like where are we? So we can look at that and determine what level text needs to be at, if that accommodation helped or not, and use that to help inform decisions that are based on the student's actual needs. So we have some schools right now who are we've been targeting more middle schools and trying to get sort of across the board, have that assessment data to make decisions. Any other questions?
I just want to say, I think these guys have done a phenomenal job. Really, Sarah's been one of the major catalysts to this, so I do want to give her a lot of credit. She's put a ton of work into this. But I think getting this procedure approved would be another huge step for us. So, I just want to reinforce that. They've done a lot of work on this. They really spent the time looking at what we're doing and developing next steps. So I just want to support them. I'm definitely a member of the team, but I have to give all the credit to them. They do a lot of the work, and yeah, my name's on there, but it's really the hard work. So.
Great, thank you. So there's been a request to amend the agenda. Unless anyone on the board objects, we're going to go to the turning points in Claremont first, and then go into the middle school alternative education program. So are there any?
I just have a question. So we just heard a pretty cool presentation that is looking for board approval. So you're just going to continue.
It's on the consent agenda.
The consent agenda. Okay.
It's on.
All right.
It's down there. We're actually voting on it today, so.
All right.
It is down there.
I'm used to doing things right at the same time.
We're in presentation mode, not voting.
Got it.
Part of why there's a long timeline.
All right, so hearing no objection. I
So
guess
while,
Move forward, yeah.
while Jen is handing out stuff, I will tell you how they have come to be here. I asked if they could come and speak to the board for about 5-10 minutes, nothing too long, and just tell the board a little bit about what they're doing, because they come into our schools, they talk to our kids, they talk to our principals and teachers and such, and they offer resources and support to our kids. And when I reached out to the admin and said, so when's the last time they came, the board, they said, we're not sure they ever came to the board. And since they've been here, what, 85 years or whatever it happens to be, give or take maybe 10, 15, 20, I don't know. It's been a long time. Several decades. I thought it might be nice for them to come. And then I just realized as I was sitting there that it was a bit of a test for me. So let's see how I do. Because I'm like, oh, wait, someone should probably introduce them. And do I remember names? Because I met them once, 2 out of 3. So let's see how I go here. So we have Jen, we have Pascal. Did I say it right? Okay. I wrote it like the geometry thing. It was
Okay, just
easier.
had me at the end, you got it right.
Pascal. And then I'm assuming you're Carrie.
I am.
Yes. I didn't even meet Carrie and I got that right. All right. Exactly. So it's all yours.
Thank you so
I
much.
will let them do it. It just shows you, I'm the executive director of our Turning Point, so I'm just here to kind of support if there's any admin questions. I'm here to answer that, but they're gonna be running the show, so.
Right, well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to come and chat with you about our program and about our work in your district. This is a unique opportunity for us to get to come and have this time with you. So we know your agenda is full. We appreciate this. So I don't know how much you all know about Turning Points Network, but we're one of 12 crisis and support centers in New Hampshire that provide support to people who've experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, sex trafficking. We have an office in Claremont and an office in Newport, and we cover all of Sullivan County. And you're probably wondering if I know that I'm not in Sullivan County right now. So I want to get that right clear at the beginning. Your district is one of the districts that we share with the Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention in Keene, because you have students from both Sullivan and Cheshire counties who attend your schools. Katrina is the educator from MCVP, who we often collaborate with when we're doing work in your district. But just so you know, in terms of our state coalition, we are really divided pretty much by county line. And yours is a shared district for us. We provide crisis and support services to people who have experienced any kind of abuse, but we also have a prevention education program, which is what Jen and I are here representing tonight, where we go into the schools and we work with students preschool through actually college. River Valley Community College covers our community. And we talk with young people about healthy relationships. We talk about warning signs of abuse. We talk about some of the really key building blocks that are part of social emotional learning, such as boundaries and empathy and coping, and knowing how to access trusted adults for support. So in your community, we are seeing students at the elementary schools and the middle school and right up through high school. And over the years that we've been at the primary school in North Charlestown and Sarah Porter and Ackworth and Fall Mountain, and I'm missing any, and Vilas. I'm wondering if I'm missing. It seems like I've got Charlestown Middle School. Yes, okay, so I think I caught them all. What we love about the curriculum that we're teaching through the Healthy Relationships Project is it's a comprehensive approach to prevention. And what that means is that not only are we working with students in the classroom, but we're training teachers, we're meeting with administrators, and we're offering parent and caregiver workshops so that we're really working as a team of adults to help kids be safe and to help kids learn the really critical healthy relationship skills that we want all children to have. So we're a piece of the puzzle as Turning Points Network, but really when we make our communities the strongest is when we're all working together. So we're very fortunate to have developed some really strong relationships with the schools in your district over the year. And we're really grateful for that. It allows us to really take our work that much further. Sometimes people will ask, well, how come an agency like Turning Points Network is in the schools? What are they doing in the schools?
And what we know is that when we can work with young people with those social emotional skills, we're building protective factors. And those protective factors are what help protect kids from abuse. And so we really, we feel that's the strength in the curriculum that we offer, is that this is a long-term investment in working with communities. We live in these communities. We care about being a part of the school and being a part of the community because we're here. And we're invested in working with our local schools. And do you want to chat a little bit about our grant project that we have, and then we're happy to.
Yeah, so we actually have an opportunity through a grant called the Parker Nelson Foundation Grant. And we chose a community to be kind of the central focus. So we picked Charlestown. And it's gonna be a pilot program that will be hopefully starting in Charlestown over the next coming months. And it's called Charlestown Stops the Cycle of Abuse. And it centers because everyone knows someone impacted by violence, assault, or abuse. TPN, that's us, aims to strengthen the community of Charlestown with improved access to support and services. So we want you guys to know that we're here and we're part of this community and we're a resource for you.
Any questions for us about our work in the schools and helping in the community?
Is that program, which you just talked about, is it housed? It's not housed in the school, it's housed in.
No, this is a community level project, which is different, but we offer community level projects as well as school projects. So this will be a community pilot that we're offering in Charleston.
And typically we come into the schools through guidance or sometimes health teachers. You know, they're often the ones who will partner with us, invite us to come in and work with their students.
Is it, so this is a community level program, so does that mean you're gonna have something like office hours or a space in Charlestown, or how are these programs getting into the community?
That's what we're working on.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to do some of what you just described, right? That we, by meeting with some of the folks in the community who can help connect us to other people that can say, you know, could we be at the library, you know, for a period of time and just be there kind of for people to stop in and learn about our services, right? And can we help get information out to all of you, right? So that if you know someone that might benefit from our services, you feel like, hey, I know a place that you can call. This is how you can reach them. I've actually met somebody there, right? It's a chance for us to kind of put a face to Turning Points Network, because you might have seen our name, but you didn't, right, have an opportunity necessarily to meet folks. So we're hoping those personal connections will help us to do some of that.
Okay, thanks.
Great question.
So we've heard from teachers that social emotional learning has taken a big hit because of the pandemic. Are you seeing on a broader scale, are you starting to see a bounce back?
You know, I think it's a little early to tell that. What we are hearing from schools across the, you know, our catchment area is that people, students and staff and adults, right, are all really feeling the, you know, really the ripple effects of the pandemic, right? Even though we seem like we're out of the crisis phase of that, now we're realizing the hit that we all took, right, with that. And so we're seeing a definite increase in requests around middle school, especially around like boundaries. And, you know, kind of knowing where's that line between respect and disrespect and how do you cope with your emotions. So we, in the last couple of years, have definitely seen an increase in those kinds of requests from schools in our catchment area. And I will say too, that I feel one of the silver linings that's coming out of this is, I think, a greater recognition of how integral social emotional learning is, right? That it can't just, it can't only be the guidance staff that are talking about that, or the head teachers, the classroom teachers are saying, without that, we can't get to the academics that we want to get to. And so I feel like there's a real investment from schools and from districts to say we want to invest in a social emotional learning because it benefits everyone.
Any other questions? Anybody?
I actually just want to make sure I'm understanding all of this, because I feel like there's several different parts, and we have, the part you just shared, you're already in our schools, working with the administration. Then you're doing this program in Charlestown or starting it, which is community-based. But we also have this other document about,
Oh, the MOU. So the MOU was a grant that they were trying to go for, and they may still.
okay, but
go
that's
for
not
it,
either of
But
these
they
projects,
put
okay.
it off for a year.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, the
unfortunate. Sorry.
timeline was so tight on the turnaround on that. It didn't really give us an opportunity to get everything we needed. But it's offered, pretty regularly. So, we're confident that by laying some groundwork, we'll be able to do another grant project next year.
I hope so. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, so that's what we were hoping to do that this year and work
Okay.
with the school district on that. But again, it does seem to come up every year. So we're hoping that we can lay the groundwork this year so that we're in a stronger position next year. It's a very competitive federal grant to get. But it's 3 years of funding, working in conjunction with all the different schools. We definitely want the school district on board and also additionally to have the buy-in of principals and to be able to work in the schools. And it's very comprehensive in its approach in terms of working with all levels. And again, the other additional component that we're hoping we can add to that is also maybe having a roving advocate as well to support counselors at the schools to have drop-ins for kids. And we're hoping that we can maybe even pilot that this year to see how it's working. Again, with the consent of the board, with the consent of the schools, so that we can really have a partnership to really strengthen what the schools are able to do. You know, we're seeing, you know, they can say, you know, Carrie and Jen can speak more to this, but in terms of the need in our schools is great, right? And, you know, acutely in the middle school, but even elementary school level, we're seeing a lot of conflict in the classrooms. And again, when we're thinking, you know, people think of us as being like a domestic violence or sexual assault agency, but what we're teaching is child abuse prevention and also just those interpersonal skills that extend just beyond domestic violence and sexual assault, but it's all relationships we have, and they're building blocks, right? And so everything's developmentally appropriate. And again, it's peer reviewed, it's demonstrated as being effective, and it's, again, age appropriate. Parents are notified, parents are able to opt out if they don't want to. We provide the parent caregiver workshop, so parents and caregivers can come and ask us questions. Carrie and Jen are always available to answer questions. We want to be as transparent as possible. So.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting
Thank
us.
you.
We appreciate it.
I have a few copies of this one.
I definitely do. I'm from Charlestown, so I would happily have connected you as well.
I only made 5 copies. I didn't know how much of you there would be. You want one too?
Anybody over there?
Well, I think it's probably more important. I know how to hunt them down.
Yeah, I
I'll.
can email you one.
Yeah, you're always feel free to contact me as well. I'm going to give amazing questions. I don't bring up the technical aspect of stuff, so I'm more than happy to answer those questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, right. Sure. We're back to C. We're back to C. We'll skip with D. Right. All right.
Great, so this is a perfect segue for my topic.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the board giving me time tonight to talk about this. I think it's a really important topic and I'm gonna go through the slides, but I'm gonna sort of elaborate on each one a little bit too, and if there's any questions. So I'm here to talk about our increasing need for out of district placements and the impact that's going to have on our budget, but also the impact it's having on our districts as a whole. I shared the slides with everybody ahead of time. One thing that we've been talking about here in the district is our enrollment. And then our enrollment overall is going down. The projection is our enrollment will continue to go down over the next few years. What we haven't talked about is special education. Our special education enrollment is not going down. It's basically staying the same. It's about 276 for the past couple of years. So when you look at that percentage, our percentage is going up, even though everybody understands that people are about 19.4%. We're pretty comparable with everybody else in the area. Some areas in our district are a little higher right now, they're at 23, 24%. Not many people are lower than us. You don't want to get up to 20%. When you get up to 20%, it's a major concern. It's typically a huge statistical red flag because now you're looking at students and you're looking in the classroom and you're saying a percentage of those students in the classroom are identified students. And this is identified students, students who have individual educational plans. We also have those students that are in the gray area that aren't identified at this point in time, but also have intensive needs. So I wanted to bring this up, to make everybody realize that, again, when we talk about enrollment may not be reducing for special education, but it's, staying the same. Why is this important fiscally? It's important fiscally because on average, special education costs are typically 2.5 times the cost of an average regular education student. But an out-of-district placement can exceed 10 times the cost of that of a regular education student. So when you start factoring in financially where we're at, this could be a major concern. What we're seeing right now in this district, and it's interesting, I got to go after Turning Point, which I appreciate. They kind of set the stage for me. There's a significant increase in students with social, emotional, and behavioral needs, special education and regular education, but this is really starting to take off and really increase. I put down in here some data that Alice Cable shared last time about the mental health needs in our district, but just the mental health needs that we're seeing in our state and the amount of increase. We talked about this last time when Alice was here, the increase in anxiety, behavioral needs of our students. Our students are really struggling. We did an informal survey to look at the percentage of staff would say they're focusing their efforts on disruptive behaviors in the classroom. It's highly variable. So, and again, this is an informal survey, so take it for what it is. It was anywhere between 15% to 50%, depending on where they're at. And then we also asked a question about what percentage would you say that student trauma, mental health issues, and increased anxiety are the primary focus of your school right now? Again, significant variability, all the way from 20% to 76% of staff in some buildings are saying that that's their main focus. That's a huge concern for us, not just for special education, it's a huge concern for us as a district. So looking at special education, we could debate this all day, what the cause of this increase is, and I put some ideas down on here, but to me, that's not really what I want to talk about today. It could be an epidemic of substance use issues at home, response to the pandemic. It could just be internet addiction, socioeconomic stressors are going on. But our students are struggling in our schools. And because our students are struggling, it's impacting everybody. So it's impacting other students in the classroom, it's impacting our teachers. We have teachers and staff who are struggling personally, but then when you're in a classroom and you have students that are struggling with their social emotional management, and ability to regulate themselves, and it's disrupting learning, the teachers are struggling too. They're not sure what to do about this. I personally feel at this point in time that we really don't have all the tools we need to address the needs of these students. And it's becoming more intense. Financially, I feel like this is a big part of my job is I try to watch the bottom dollar. So I look at trends and I try to predict where we're heading. Just so the school board understands, this isn't the first time I've brought up to administration the need for a discussion about what we're going to do with some of these students. It's just really reached its precipice. We're really at the point now where we've got to do something and we've got to be proactive about it. If you look at these numbers, back in fiscal year 21, we were at about, let's say $600,000 for out of district tuition, which is significant. Then in 22, we were about 775. And now this year we're at, really it's at 1.3 million if you take into account the residential cost of this. What happened was when I planned the budget based on previous years, and I look at the trends from the years before that, and we also look at what's going on with our identifications. I planned for, we had 10 students that were identified for out of district, and I built in a buffer. I said, well, we'll plan for 12. We'll think it's going to be about 12. What happened was it turned out to be 16 students. We had some move-ins, so those are something we can't do anything about. We've had the court system place some students in out of district placements. We were hit with a double-edged sword. Besides having more students, the cost went astronomically high. I wasn't predicting this level of cost. I mean, just for transportation right now, I think I've shared this with you guys before. We went from paying, let's say $100 and something, maybe $200 for transportation. We're up to close to $400 a day for transportation. I went to a director's meeting, a regional director's meeting. One district over near the Sunapee Way said, oh, you guys are lucky. We're paying over $600, paying $650 a day for transportation for a student. Just that cost alone will break us if we continue spending that amount of money on students. So I put in for the next upcoming year, when I look at the level of student need, I anticipate there's more students and there's been more requests for out of district placements. We're trying to maintain as best we can, but there's also no placements to send them to. So that's our other, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So can you expand on why we're sending kids out of district? What are we?
Sure, we have students, because of their individualized educational needs, we're not able to meet those needs in our district. So we look for a continuum, we're always looking for the least restrictive environment for our students. So we always start with what can we do in the regular education classroom? Then what can we do to provide extra supports in that classroom? If they need to come out of the classroom to like a resource room to get some supports, we'll do that. Specifically on this topic for students that have behavioral needs, we may have a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst work with the students. We may have our school counselor work with the students, our mental health providers work with the students. Then we come up with plans for them to be in the school in the program. But what happens here is we don't have a program in our district. So if you can't manage in a resource setting or you can't manage in the regular classroom, the only other option I have at that point in time is looking at an out-of-district placement. So these are day placements. We have a range, but there's not a lot of local placements. So we have some students that go to Brattleboro. So we have transport them to Brattleboro. We have some that go over to the Claremont area. And then we have some residential placements. So they're kind of arranged. Claremont has a program, but at this point in time, Claremont's been struggling with staffing their program. So that's probably not going to continue for us sending our students there. I think they're going to maintain what they have at this point.
Are these violent behaviors? Are they just behaviors that are disruptive to the classroom? Are they?
Depending on the student's needs, they can be violent behaviors. They can be disruptive to the learning of others. Some students' mental health are struggling pretty significantly with mental health issues. I'll be transparent. The majority of behaviors that send you out of district are disruptive, violent behaviors. We try to maintain as best we can, but these are students that are just unable to maintain in the classroom setting or even in a resource setting. Yeah. So when we look at the out of district placements here, I wanted to talk a little bit about sped aid. To be honest, we do get some financial, I don't think we get some money back from the state for students, depending on when they're going out. So the estimated cost per pupil tuition for this year has been estimated at $19,034. So gets into the cap, and I mean, Mary, if I'm explaining this wrong, you can jump in. But it's basically 3.5 times the estimated per pupil cost is how they determine that. And that's where you get the $66,619. And then the state pays up to 80% of that cost above the 3. So you have this like 3.5 to 10 times above, they pay up to 80%. Then if you go above 10 times that cost, they'll pay that full amount. The caveat is, and I haven't seen it happen yet, but it could happen. There's only a certain amount of money. So I'll just be like all the districts right now, everybody's agreed that we're all sending more students out of district. If we send more students out at a higher cost, there's only that one pot. We may get less of that pot than we should have gotten to begin with. It's always a year back. So the money we got this year is from the previous year. It's not like you get it immediately back. So we are going to get some money back, but it doesn't come anywhere near the amount of money we're spending. I think this past year we got about $245,000 back in sped aid. And so it's hard to say what we'll get back in the next year.
It can be, like you said, it can be as low as 60%.
Correct.
I mean, I've seen it be down to 60.
Right, it just depends, and it makes me concerned when I go to meetings and everybody talks about the numbers the students are sending out of district, because we're all going for that same pot of money back from the state. So I feel that we can anticipate it's going to be less, but I don't want to tell you that. Maybe I'm wrong. So looking at this, the long-term cost, the other thing I want us all to realize is when we send students out of district to these placements, let's say we send a student out in the 3rd grade and the cost is approximately $90,000 for tuition, which is pretty much what it's going for right now for a day placement. Let's say they get a related service, maybe they get counseling. Let's assume that they're not getting any para support, which that's rare. Typically they do want para support even in these therapeutic programs, but I want to be nice and say they're not getting para support, so I won't factor that into the cost. If that student left in the 3rd grade and stayed out until the 12th grade, we'll pay over $1 million for that student, just for that one student going out of district. The chances, I can tell you right now from my years of being in education, it's my 26th year, it is very rare to have students come back from an out of district placement. It does happen if you have a good program, but it's rare. So once these students go out in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, all the way up now, remember they can stay in school till they're 22. We're going to be paying that cost. And this is if they stay in the same type of placement at only a 2.5% increase. I kind of was, on the lower end. I didn't want to go extreme. And that's assuming they are not going to require more intensive placement as they move up into their high school years. That's, to me, I was like, oh my gosh, it's $1 million per student. And right now we have 16 going out of district. So what can we do to meet our students' needs and still be fiscally responsible? And that's why I'm here today. Is I really feel as if we need to actively explore an in-district alternative behavioral program for them. And I'm saying we should start at the middle school level. I think we still need to continue looking for school social workers and mental health clinicians to work with our families. And I think we absolutely have to support our teachers at the tier 1 and tier 2 level. So that's not special education, but I think it really starts at that base. We've got to really support them at the base because we can't just continuously be referring students for special education services. We will break this. We're going to break the system. I only have so much staff. There's only so many supports we can put into place. We start teetering up to 23, 24, 25%. We're going to have a serious problem in the district. It really starts at tier 1 and tier 2. But until we get to that point, we do have this group of students that are gonna need intensive supports and needs that we need to address. So, looking at the program, what I'm proposing is a self-contained program. This would be a special education program that would have no more than 12 students in it. There's an age range of no more than 4 years. The minimum is 1 special education teacher and 1 paraprofessional. I would recommend 1 special education teacher and 2 paraprofessionals in the program. I would recommend contracted services for BCBA, student service coordinator support, mental health counselor, contracted mental health provider support, and, you know, if we could, a school social worker support with this, because we need to pull in these families. We need a complete wraparound program for this. I would absolutely recommend a team approach to meet the students' needs with developmental disability or with disabilities. I see this as all encompassing. This is a program that everybody's working together. They need to have access to the regular education curriculum also, to the general education curriculum. So this would not be something that we could place away from the schools. My recommendation when I'm looking at this though, is there's going to be some different key components to the program. And I know everybody's seen this before, but the key components really are, we need to look at mindfulness, acceptance and commitment therapy, applied behavior analysis. So there has to be a social emotional component to this. And there has to be curriculum. There has to be general education curriculum with this. There has to be a behavioral piece. So it's very comprehensive. We need to think outside the box a little bit. There needs to be parent and family support and training involved in this. It can't just be, we're only working with the students. We've got to be working with the entire family unit. I'm envisioning project-based learning. And it's not, these are students that don't traditionally do well in what we consider just sitting in classes. So we need to do things differently for these students. Here's the questions we have: the space and location. Where is this going to be? I've made a recommendation for a standalone modular or classroom. I think that makes the most sense. So the students have a place to be where they're not disrupting others, but can also access the general education curriculum when they need to. We're going to have a continuum of students. We may have some students that are in this program all day. We may have some students that just check in, that really are doing quite well and can be out in the regular classrooms and eventually get out of this program and transition back into their schools. I see this as a program that needs its own bathroom, because again, getting into the disruptive piece, a minimum of 2 rooms that afford space for the students to divide up when needed, some private space for counseling sections, and access to the nurse if needed. I know this is hard to see, but this would be the estimated cost. I asked Bill to come today because I think I've underestimated the site work, so, but looking at the modular, I sort of gasped when I saw this, $277,000 for a modular building. Plus site work, approximately 30,000, but it may be a little more than 30,000. We'd have to contract for BCBA support, it's about $90,000 for 3 days a week. Contracting for mental health support is about $50,000 for 2 days a week. Teacher with special education certifications, about $86,000 salary and benefits. 2 paraprofessionals, about $45,000. Summer PDs, $3,000, and supplies would be another $3,000. My thought was, how would we pay for this? We could access ESSER funds for the initial startup costs. There are going to be costs to this. As the ESSER funds expire, then we move these costs into the regular budget. My hope would be we bring back some of our out-of-district students into this program, which would then save us about $65,000 to $100,000 per student. And then also we could then eventually, as we get going, open up enrollment to other districts, which we then charge them tuition to come to our program. So that's my presentation. Do you have any questions?
I strongly support this. Being I used to be the director for VACE, and that was the whole idea of that, was that we were able to bring kids home from the out-of-district placements, and that the students were here so we could get them back into their schools. And that's your ultimate goal, is to have them reintegrate back into their schools.
It really is a continuum of services. We have many families that struggle when we get to this point because we have to look at an out-of-district placement. They don't want their children leaving our communities.
Mhm.
They recognize that once they leave the community, they don't get back, and they become disjointed from their communities and their friends. It's very hard. So these are difficult decisions for our families. Now we do have some students that are doing quite well in our out-of-district placements that may not want to come back here. But I think we have several that will, and several that are ready to.
Well, and one of the things that we always found was that we struggled to have, during the time that I was special ed director in other districts, I would have trouble convincing parents that to have their student go into a more restrictive environment. And then I would have trouble getting the families to be okay with the children coming out of those more restrictive environments, because the children were being successful, and why are you going to put them back where they weren't successful? So I think that the concept of having it close so that you can get kids to slowly reintegrate and have it build on success is a very important piece.
it would definitely help us about bringing students back. That's one of our biggest challenges. Is we have students that are successful in their out of district placements. There becomes this real hesitancy, well, what's it gonna look like when they come back to the school? And there's not this interim, but they're going from a completely therapeutic setting to right back to the classroom.
Mhm.
And if it's not successful on that initial return, they'll never return back. Once they
Right.
go back out again, they won't get a second, they won't come back again. We get one shot.
Because the learning really has to take place on both sides. The environment where the child's returning to has to also learn how to kind of be able to support that child back in that environment. So that's a real important piece to it. So that's fantastic.
Shelley had her hand raised.
Shelley?
Yeah, I'm with Sarah. I strongly support this. I probably couldn't support it anymore, and I appreciate all the work on the slides. I guess my biggest question is the numbers on here are kind of a slide presentation, but where do we go from here if there is a feeling that we would like to explore this further? So what's the next step? Does anybody see a committee coming together? I do have concerns over staffing. We already have a hard time trying to find staff. We had an extremely hard time trying to find a social worker, as we know. But I just see this as a huge benefit to the district, and would hate for this presentation to be had and then just sit on the back burner for 8, 9, 10 months. And then before you know it, we're in those difficult situations that Zandra is presenting this evening. So I guess that's my question or thought.
I know from a district standpoint, district admin, we would like to do whatever we could to get it in place for the start of the next school year. We have access to the ESSER funds, and if you think of the buying of the modular, if you get that taken care of through the ESSER funds, through student support, student learning loss, that's a big win. Zandra has been working hard with the state, because you can't just say we're gonna have a program.
Right.
You need to get state approval, and I think we're in good shape working towards that. Staffing is hard. Staffing's gonna be hard. Out of district placements, finding them is also very hard. So I think, if we create a model that is strength-based, so to speak, thinking I find it sad to say that we call project-based learning thinking outside the box, but thinking outside the box that the kids aren't successful in the traditional way. I really think that the sooner the better, because we have some kids that are struggling mightily, as some of you hear periodically.
Yeah, go ahead.
I support this strongly too, but I do, worry we don't know what budget we're under. We're gonna find that out now in 2 more weeks, right? And this is basically 1 more week.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
One more week.
Whenever it is, whenever we vote. And this is adding probably about 3 people, right? And we're already, if we get under depends on which budget we have, we're already saying our budget is different than the admin's budget, so there is some movement there. So I'd like to see just a better budget for this, more detailed numbers about how fast, who we could bring back, how much we'd be saving by who we brought back. What's the bottom line on this? Because there's really no bottom line. This is all,
The tricky part, I'm gonna be transparent, the tricky part about this is because we're looking towards the fall. Right now is when the conversations are had about what next year looks like for those students. I could tell you, we probably have a couple, let's say I have 2 students, but the question's gonna be, what's the program? So I'm in this sort of double-edged sword where, like, I hear what you're saying. If I have a program to bring them back to, and if I can staff it, then this is what we have. If I don't, then I can't promise you that those 2 are coming back and you're gonna get that $200,000 back into the budget. So it is, yeah, I can definitely fine tune it a little bit, but that is the challenging piece to it. Is then where are we gonna find those funds to get these staff members?
Well, and the idea though, for this year, sorry, is that we do have ESSER, right? So
Right.
you can use this year to get some of the money through ESSER so that
To get the program
you
started.
get it started and let's say you don't, you get one kid next year. Well, then let's say you get 5 kids the following year. Then you start to see the savings that you're gonna accrue.
What I
And you
need,
can make adjustments.
and what I need you to realize is right now, we probably have 8 students, what I call in the queue, 8 students who are on that cusp, but we're just barely hanging on, that need out of district placements. If we don't create something and I don't figure something out, I'd say 5 of those are gonna be looking for somewhere next year, within that year, are gonna be looking for out of district placements. And that's what concerns me, is I'm gonna come to you and you're gonna say, Xandra, this is the budget you were given. And you are so far beyond that budget that, I mean, to be honest, you're gonna say you're killing us. You're not, there's nothing we can do. We gotta meet student needs, but when I see 1.3 out of that budget and I know what's coming for these other students, that's what concerns me. That's why I feel like we're right at that point. We have to do something.
Yeah.
Is there any hope at all, since we have a overall reduction of students? I mean, overall, the numbers are going down. Is there any hope at all that we could repurpose an existing space to do this? Or do we have to build a new building?
Just from experience, and I don't know if Sarah has the same thing. If there are some definite drawbacks to having it in an existing space. Insofar as, so you can't have them away from the educational component. Which is sort of what Vase used to do, but then they would cart them back and forth. And you had the educational component
Right,
too.
right.
But you
But for
also,
example, there's a modular building right behind this one. It's got 2 rooms. I think the 5th
Correct.
grade goes
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Is there any possibility that that could work if we lose enough students here that we can move the 5th grade back into this building? I mean, could that work?
theoretically, it could. I know in terms of,
I mean, if it meant, for example, that, oh my God, some of our current middle school students might have to go to Walpole or Charlestown.
yeah,
Where there's actual space. I mean, just trying to
yeah,
think outside of the box.
beyond project-based learning, well done.
Right, yes.
That sort of does lead into one of my questions, is have we looked at what it takes to get a modular at this point?
Mhm.
So how far out are they?
If we had ordered it March 15th, we could have got it in September.
Okay, so we're looking even farther. There's no way it's gonna be ready for the first of school. I mean, and that's just the way everything goes at this point. But that's an interesting idea, that we may have some sort of,
I mean, with a little shuffling around and maybe we could do it. It's something that a committee should look into and to see if we could do something like that. Free up enough space in one of the existing buildings so they're here. And if they can be merged back into the regular education aisle, great. But at least they're local. We're not sending them to Brattleboro or Bellows Falls or who knows where. I guess Arkansas is the next free space from what I heard the last time.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely correct. There's right now, when you run out of space in the state, you're sending them to Missouri.
Yeah.
You would have, and then it gets into, parents have the right to visit their children.
And we have to
So
pay for
where's
it.
that cost?
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least on a monthly
We,
basis.
we have to transport the parent, right?
so that's one concern I had. The other, I remember when Vase closed. Why did Vase close?
Because I stopped being the director.
Well,
No, I'm kidding.
I think one of the challenges, because I was here right before it closed, and the challenge you had is that you had, I think at one point you had 3 districts.
We had,
And then
at
you
the
ended
very,
up with
well, at the
2.
very beginning, we had 3 districts,
Yeah.
but Newport pulled out pretty quickly because that was when it was in Claremont.
Yeah,
And then when we brought it here to Fall Mountain, we got it a little more, it was, the behavior part of it was not great when there were 3 districts.
yeah,
And we brought it here and had it in a lovely space, but of an old medical building, but we really worked on the behavior component of it, and we really worked on the transition back, and that was a huge piece of it, and the most expensive part of it, because we would have students starting their transition, they just go over for a visit and come back. And so you had to pay for them to go back and forth, and and then slowly increasing that, and we had to transport the kids back and forth, and so that was that transportation is really, really expensive. And it was hard to keep justifying it.
Well, and I
because of
think, I
that.
don't remember how it was funded, but I think that created some challenges where, because you had the two districts, I remember
Split the cost.
Claremont being mad that they had to pay for X and they could do it cheaper by themselves, and my guess is they started their own thing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I
But
can't,
we just didn't continue. We
right.
just
Well,
put it to bed and.
Well,
and
it
sent our
actually-
children out of district.
actually, it came over to the high school for a while.
Right.
And it was
So we do have a program at the high school. We have the CATS program.
Yeah.
And then we did have a program at Charlestown Middle School.
Yeah.
And then what happened there was, for a variety of reasons, I don't think we had such intensive needs students, and we did have some, and they went out of district placements, and we had some staffing issues, and so the variety of factors, it just sort of dissolved.
Okay.
We had students stop going there. I'm just trying to tell you right now that for whatever, we can, like I said, debate this, why all of a sudden there's been this huge spike in increase in students, but within the past 3-4 years, it's been steadily increasing. I saw it starting at the primary elementary levels when I first brought it up to admin and said, we really need to look at an elementary program. We decided that the time wasn't right. It was right during the Charlestown withdrawal discussion, all that. Then we hit COVID and we're like, well, it's not really, the time isn't right now. And so that's why I'm saying now we're there. We're especially there at the middle school level.
Right.
We're really at a crisis point with that age range. So
I just want to make sure we look at the reasons it didn't work before and we learn from
I
it.
agree.
Because we can't really afford to try something and then go backwards again, because we're gonna lose those out of district placements that we already have, or there's so many other things.
Well,
that I'm
that's why
sure
I'm
you.
saying that there is a cost to this. I think in the past, we didn't have those components that I recommended. We didn't necessarily have a mental health provider directly tied to the program. We may have had someone who was a mental provider in district trying to support that in addition to their job. So it was like an add-on to what they currently have.
Okay.
I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for money to contract with somebody to help. Now, I'm not saying that the people in district wouldn't support on those off days if they're not there. But the same thing with having a DCBA focus on that program, and that's their main focus, not torn between other parts of the district too.
And,
So
and
a
that
more
really,
intensive program.
that really was the thing when BASE was working really well. And we were actually written up in a national magazine because we were doing really well in terms of actually getting kids back.
Mhm.
That's what we had. We contracted with Claremont. What is it?
Essential.
West Central,
Yeah.
and they had I think 2 different counselors that would come for specific days, and they were in the building with us. And we had a board certified behavior analyst that was our consultant, and then our teachers were all trained in it, so that's what made it work, because there was consistency across the program. And then we were able to train the schools in terms of what they needed to do, how to follow this behavior plan that this student came back
Well, that would be
with.
my hope, is that this program would also be a resource to whatever school it was next to help support. It wouldn't necessarily just support those students, but they could also support other students in that school too,
Mhm.
as they're there. So, but the family component, that's where I see the contract, if it is West Central or if it's family services, whatever county we happen to be in, where the program's located, that would be part of the program. I would expect that they would also tie in the family support piece, and that could either be meeting in the schools. I think there's gonna have to be some flexibility in scheduling at times. Like I said, I was hoping for a social worker piece, because then you're looking at meeting with families beyond school hours. There may be that flexibility for some of the students too.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think is the likelihood of finding the specialized people to fill these roles? Like and at what point do you say, okay, we have enough people to move forward, or we don't have enough and we're not gonna do a good job rolling it out? I mean, because of what we dealt with looking for the social worker in Charlestown, I have big
I can't
concerns.
make
that
any
we'll find-
promises, I'm hopeful, but I guess, I personally wrestled with this, like, but at what point do I just say we need to do this and we've got to do something? I'm hopeful. I don't know. It's hard to find people. My hope would be, maybe there's somebody out there that this type of program with this type of level of support they're interested in versus a general special education teacher. Maybe somebody out there is going to see this and be like, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of something that's just beginning. And even if you're that first year teacher, I'd be more than willing to work with that person, because the BCBA we're going to contract with is very experienced. So if I could maybe make it enticing that way, I don't know, it's something I struggle with. How do we grow our own? How do I start getting enthusiasm from our students here to go off to college and then come back here and be special education teachers or regular education teachers or paraprofessionals? That's something I'm always thinking about and having those conversations. So I don't know, I'm hopeful. But I feel like we don't start doing something, planning for something, it's going to tip the other way, where then we're going to be so far in the hole with students and financially, we're gonna say, now how do we do it? You spent, you're overspending on that piece.
I think the other thing to think about is, let's say we can't find people, right? The people are in out of district placements now. So you're not spending additional money for people you can't find. And so there's really, the over under isn't very, you're not gonna lose anything really, because you won't have any people anyways.
But it's not really an all or nothing. You might find one of the people
Correct.
and have, they'd be the
Yeah.
perfect person.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the whole team ready to roll out, you can't move forward. Because they do depend on each other, every step.
But a big part of it will be the contracted piece, so I'll be able to get that. If I can get the special education teacher piece, hopefully some paraprofessionals. The other pieces will come together. I may not have the social work piece, to be completely transparent, that may be a work in progress, but is that something I can work with like West Central or Manana Family Services to help me with that aspect? I'm hopeful. Yeah,
I actually have somebody I want to talk.
okay, great.
So I'd like to chime in and just say, if Xandra has the ability to place our students in places that we didn't even know they could go in, I would think that if she is motivated and committed enough, that she could probably find the people to work this out. So she finds us amazing things. So I'm sure she has the network of people to be able to find people to staff this. So I have confidence in her without a doubt.
Thanks, Sally, I appreciate that. I hope so.
No
I am motivated. I'm not gonna lie, I am motivated about this. You know, I've been looking at this for a while, but yes, staffing is going to be a challenge. But like I said, we have to do something. We have to start raising that bar and we have to start rebuilding. And that's where I really feel like we're at. Like I said, I truly believe when I shared with admin, yes, I'm the special education director, but it all starts at tier 1. We have to work together at tier 1 and tier 2 to affect tier 3 where I'm at. So yeah, I feel like we gotta do this.
So my last question is, regarding ESSER funds, what do we have available that isn't earmarked or spent? It'd be nice to have a report to know what we have left to spend, because I feel like a lot of conversations.
Yeah, we have at least $2 million
spending.
in ESSER 3. A lot of districts did all the ventilation work and they spent millions and millions on that. We did not. So we still have at least $2 million of ESSER 3, which expires in 2024.
And it's absolutely not claimed, earmarked. It's just sitting there waiting for some program like
We
this.
were just all waiting for Xander. Yeah, I would hate to lose it.
Oh, yeah.
And we
We'll do that.
you know,
This can go towards the 20% for students,
student learning. loss.
learning ones.
I would hope.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
said we have to spend at least 20% of that. Was it
So that
4
would be
million?
600, yeah, so you're talking, what, 8 million, I mean, 800,000.
Yeah, we have to spend.
Oh, thank
student
you on that.
services, but the building can be part of that. I did that over in the other district where we had 3 classrooms outside and we had our whole courtyard redone, and that was considered part of it for the students learning. So if we did decide to do a building, we could put it into ESSERS to pay for that.
Outdoor learning centers.
Yeah.
So like pavilion.
Right, exactly. Yep. And you can tie it to learning.
So I'm not really worried,
Well,
Mary writes this part of the grant, so I'm not worried at all, but I'm not really worried about the money piece in terms of the initial startup costs. I think the question will be this ongoing staffing, which should come from savings that you derive. And also, you know, I mean, there are districts out there, I don't think in New Hampshire, offering bonuses to special ed folks to come on board.
Come on board. I do know that when I was the special ed director over in Springfield, and one of the first things that I did was to build up our program that was like this. We were able then to, not the first year because we were building it, we had kids in it, it already existed, but it needed a little, just jazzed. And so we built it up so that it would be able to support our kids. And then we were able to, we had nobody in day programs at all. And we had, I think, one or two students who were very significant. They needed to be somebody to be in a residential, but all of our day kids came home. And it was not helpful to that day program because it's like a sucking sound of those kids coming out of it. But it was very good for our kids because they were in our district and we were able to get them back into their schools. So it's,
we have transportation, Art does a phenomenal job and we have students are transported by our transportation here down to community house, but it can be a challenge.
it's a challenge. Absolutely.
Gotta make that run and.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. So the more we can do in our district, I think the better we're gonna be in the long run.
And I think that, to speak to your question, Kevin, about, how many kids will be able to come back, that first year, not looking at bringing a whole bunch of kids back yet, because you want to build it. And so if you have kids in district who are just about to go out and you kind of build it with a small number of students, and you are able to really build a really good program from that, then you can start to say, okay, now for next year, we're gonna have Johnny come back and we're gonna have Janie come back and,
Sure, because some of our families, they're gonna want to see that. They're anxious because when they left, things weren't going so great.
yeah.
And so they're gonna want to see what is this program that you're trying to sell me to bring my child back to. I don't want my child to come back and be not successful.
Right, it's traumatic and you're dealing with trauma in these families when you start talking about having a shakeup, so. Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Fully operational, how many students do you see this could service?
When it's fully operational, 12.
That's a state requirement or rule. The state tells us no more than 12.
Yeah,
Right, so 12 per program. If you wanted a second program, you have another 12.
yeah, like Base had three different classrooms, and so we were able to serve. We were able
But
to
like
do that.
anything, once you do one, now you know how to do and you're gonna learn from doing the first one. Hopefully, most of the stuff goes right, but there'll probably be something that goes wrong. But yeah, as you get better at it, adding a second program won't be a problem at all.
When I was researching these, they have two companies that do the modular classrooms. I will get in touch with the other one. Now, I got in touch with them, but when I got the numbers from the first one, I just passed them on to them. I'll call them and see if they have a quicker lead time. And maybe even less. I can do that. I'll do that this week.
So I have a comment, but a question, since Bill just brought that up. Bill, what about preferred building systems out of Claremont?
I contacted them.
I mean, it's a local company in a local district. They might be able to custom prefab classrooms in a timely manner. But aside from that, the comment I have is that if we really think about it, and the presentation that we heard tonight is that we can't afford not to go this route. We can't afford not to be proactive and do this, because let's say we don't, okay? Those costs are coming, and her budget, whether it's over, under, or is gonna get funded.
Right.
No matter what, at the expense of regular education and everything else. So it's better to, I appreciate your presentation, your thoughtfulness, everything you've done to map it right out for us. What a roadmap,
And I would just like to add one thing. You've given us an excellent presentation. I don't want to speak for the board, but I'm on board with it and everything. I would very much like to see you give the same presentation to the budget committee and get them on board too.
Sure.
But the timing is perfect with ESSER funds. If they weren't there, this would be hard,
A lot harder.
Much
pill to
harder.
swallow, but still one we would have to swallow.
Yeah.
And now it's a gift.
Okay.
You're the chair.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. You go first.
Well, all I was gonna say is that I know that this is in our consent agenda for just a simple approval, but I think it's important enough to actually make a motion and have us vote on it.
Yeah.
So we'll just take it out.
We can
We'll
pull
take it
out.
separate.
We'll take it out. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now you can go.
Yeah, thanks. So the average out of district placement's about $90,000, you'd say?
It's about, $100,000 now. Yeah, it used to be about 65.
So I'm on board. It takes about 3 to break even. Yeah. And so I'm on board.
Does that include transportation, Sandra?
For some, we have a low, right now, we have a low of, this is just day placement. I have a low of probably 68,000 to a high of 180,000. 180,000 is extremely high because transportation is not provided by us, we provide transportation. And that particular student needs individual transportation. So that's a high. The other low is transportation provided by us. And that student doesn't get any extra supports or services. If you need pair support, I shared that with you guys last time, I think it's $50 per hour on average right now.
One more question. Do you think there's anybody currently on staff who would be interested in this position?
I don't know because it puts us in an awkward position because I'm pulling from somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any extra staff. So I don't know.
Are there any contracting companies out there that would provide this type of work on a temporary basis? I mean, I made a living doing that in software analysis. As far as I mean, that was my whole job. I was working my way out of a job.
I don't know if there is remote special education service providers. That is happening. But I don't know any service providers because the districts, all of our surrounding districts in the state are looking for special education teachers.
Right.
To be completely transparent, it's very difficult. And nobody's found, except some people going remote. They
Hey, it
have
might be a
remote
money-making
providers.
operation,
Um,
you know?
so
Start up
If
a
we had
business.
somebody interested on staff now, like for this program, I'd want in person in there. I wouldn't want remote. Like that would be enough.
No.
You have to have someone
Yeah.
who's on the ground. Is there another provider we could have remotely? I don't know. The nature of our students, they struggle with that remote piece. I mean, we have some that it would work for, but not a lot. I don't know. Remote was tough for us. I'm gonna be honest, for our students with special needs.
Yeah, it's hard. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments or questions? How do the administrators feel about this? Feeling,
No, I think they all recognize it. Is that accurate, that there is a need?
I think we all recognize it in whatever school we're in, from elementary to middle school. I think the need right now is at the middle school
Mhm.
level. And that's where we're starting. We've had discussions for, as Andrew said, for probably 4 or 5 years now. We dissolved our program. We only had three students in it when we dissolved it. Times have changed and we knew that it probably wasn't going to be a forever situation. We were just having trouble with staffing and other reasons. And we're able to support them within our schools. It seems like even with the supports at tier 1 and tier 2 within our schools, we're not seeing the same results. So we need to look at doing something a little differently. This would provide that.
great, thanks. Okay, so I'm gonna move us on. Thank you, Sandra. And we decided that, Sarah, you really shouldn't play poker. Your face like tells what you're thinking over there. It might go with a name, because I used to get that in my performance reports. Your emotions are on your sleeve.
Sorry.
No, nothing to be sorry about. I think it's great. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have the February 27th public session. And we want to do them all together? All together now. All right, so
Make a motion to approve the public and non-public session from the February 27th.
I do have, a couple things.
okay, we need a second, and then we can talk about it. Are you going to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a second. Okay, so
I just, there's, in one place, it talks about, Chris saying something. I think we need to clarify that it was Chris Young who said it, because it's a pretty common name. Maybe people don't know. They're looking back. And shortly after that, it talked about federal guide or some sort of guidance. I'm sorry, I don't have them open, but I think we need to specify that it's federal Title IX guidance. open. I'm sorry, I don't have them open. I just made that.
All right.
I think it's. See how easy it is with paper?
I love paper.
Yeah.
Misty won't deliver mine though. So it's on the first page of the Monday, February 27th, 2023. And then. Oh.
That would have worked a lot easier.
Right after.
Yeah, I got that. And then. The guidance change in administration, want to make sure that, you know, federal and not our.
Yeah. So it's Title IX. Yeah.
Okay, so. So with those corrections, all in favor of accepting the approval of minutes?
Aye.
Do we?
Call since Shelley's on.
We do need to do a roll call. So Joe,
Yes.
Andy, yes.
Alyssa, yes.
Sarah, yes.
Kevin, yes.
Oh, yeah. Shelley?
Shelley, yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. All right. So recognition of visitors and public comment. Do we have visitors and public comment?
You could.
Caleb.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna put Caleb in with administrator's report, but yeah, but 1 second. Caleb. All right, so now we're gonna move to reports of administrators. Caleb, why don't you lead us off?
I'll keep it brief. Our nursing department at the high school is starting a distracted driving thing this week. So today in advisories, we watched a video about distracted driving, and tomorrow they're bringing a simulation for sophomores and seniors. So they can learn about how dangerous it is to be distracted on the road, which I think is important and cool. Also this week, we have the SAT on Wednesday for juniors, which is our state testing. I'm sure you're aware. And coming up, we have transition night for 8th graders, so they'll come to the high school. They've already done their scheduling. I think most students have done scheduling at this point, just a few stragglers left. And they're gonna learn about the layout of the school and everything and figure out how to transition to the high school. So that's coming up in the next month. More exciting news, we have a March Madness trivia competition that one of our social studies teachers put together. So every week in advisory, there's a playoff of some different advisories, and they do a trivia competition. And then towards the end of April, they're gonna have the final 4 matches and a fun little pep rally for kicking into April break. The play at Fall Mountain just concluded 2 showings last weekend. They did Clue. They were pretty good. I don't know if anyone saw them, but I went, it was really good. Spring sports are starting tryouts today and this week to start season soon. And the other thing that Mr. Venice said he's gonna talk more about is we just ran our student council blood drive today. So we did that today.
And also, somebody won competition in French, didn't they?
I did. I happened to win a competition in French this past weekend. But
What was it?
I presented a 4-minute oratorical piece on the importance of French in my future. There were 3 other students, so 4 including me, 2 from Fall Mountain and then 2 from Nashua. And I get to go to regionals next weekend in Salem. That is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, so
Dr.
couple,
Superintendent.
Dr. Mister.
Dr.
Yeah.
Metzger.
Yeah, I was leading a group today at a legislative priority thing, me and somebody else. And her name was listed on there as Dr. So-and-so, and I was Brendan. I'm like, "Fuck that." You know, so anyways, originally, when we were meeting last Monday, we had said to the admin, just submit the written reports. Don't really present out because I know we had a really full thing. Subsequent to that, we also had a conversation with Kevin and I think it was Sarah, right? Or was it, no, Kevin and Alyssa, we were chatting and we thought what might be good going forward is to submit the written report. But also then to give a much more brief thing.
That was Kevin.
Oh, good, okay. Yeah, no, that's a different thing. Please go.
We talked about it.
Oh, okay. But like, something that going well, something that you want the board to know, and then something that what was the last one? I was trying to find it, but a concern, yes.
Celebrate no.
Thank you. So for today, I'm just gonna do 2 of those. And then anyone else, I suppose, that has something could do that if that's okay with the board, because you did get our written stuff. So the thing that is a good thing is I want the board to know that our very own Mary Henry has received her certification. It's all done. And what do they call that? On time and ahead of schedule or something like that.
Under budget too.
It was under budget because I don't remember paying anything, so it's a good deal. And then something that I want the board to know is that last time we met, we talked about the whole, I don't know, bullying, harassment. And we have Megan Glenn from Drummond Woodsum scheduled to come and present in public session, kind of, you know, this is Title IX, where it's going, this is harassment, this is all of that. And then to go into non-meeting so that she could give the board some legal advice on how to, because, you know, these things are oftentimes clear as mud. You know, legal advice on how the board can respond to things that come up. So I know the board had said that they were looking for something, so that is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, sir.
We're up to 4 snow days, so that's a semi-concern.
Yeah.
No more,
No more.
please. Oh, that was quite a swim.
That would break.
No, it was.
All right. Anyone else want to?
Can I share without following Brandon's rules?
Oh, God.
We, at the Charleston Middle School, we have a parent forum tomorrow night at, a time somewhere around 6 or 6:30. 6:30, thank you. Parent forum tomorrow night at Charleston Middle School at 6:30, just regarding our current behavior system, student behaviors we're seeing, trends, and really, focusing on forward movement and solutions, with parent and family input. And so we have surveys that have gone out to parents and families, to staff, and to students. That will serve as baseline data, not only for the board in the strategic planning process and whatever other information you may want to use it for, but also for the work that we're doing at Charlestown Middle School specifically. So as we start to implement changes to our MTSS model, our multi-tier system of supports model, we'll be able to measure those changes against the baseline data we're collecting now through qualitative surveys. And then be able to use the feedback from those families who are able to attend tomorrow. And we have several staff members planning to attend tomorrow night to inform future board discussions too. So this is sort of underway prior to our board discussion with Mr. Wood, the parent from our district, kind of related to the Title IX conversation, but ties nicely into that work as well. So we have that coming up tomorrow night. This is an FYI. That was number 2. I followed one of the rules. We went skating today and only had 1 potential concussion and stitches for another child. So didn't feel anybody. That's celebration. Yeah. Hey. I really don't have any concerns there.
So I have a couple of groups that I want to recognize. Mr. Sayers and the boys ski team finished the state runner-up last week. I also want to recognize Mr. Walker and the drama club who did put Clue on. They've been working since November to get ready, and they had their 2 performances last week. I know I saw Alyssa there, and if I had presented last week, then I would have invited you all to meet last week.
I'm sorry if you missed it. It was really funny.
Oh, that's great.
The kids did a great job. Today, the student council and Mr. Beer hosted the blood drive.
We had approximately 50 people between students, staff, and townspeople who came and donated blood today. So that was great. Something I would want you to know, due to the change in the interpretation of the law, we've had to change how we're doing special ed next year. So our special ed department and the counseling department have been working extremely hard to reconfigure the schedules for next year. So this has been, we've known since November, they've been working very, very hard to get ready for the next school year. And then our concern is we have a number of students who are continuing to struggle with emotional and mental health needs.
That is a concern.
Can I jump in with one more thing? And I know I put in the written stuff, but I really want to put it out there to the world. I was just back there whispering with Caleb, and I really, it is awesome that we have a national merit finalist.
Yeah.
Okay, and the deal with that, and I didn't know that because that's way beyond anything I would get, is that no matter what happens, he finds out in April, this is what I was just whispering about, that he gets a scholarship. He gets scholarship A or scholarship B, but it's, I mean, how many people make that level? So few.
15,000.
Yeah, out of how many millions that take it?
Yeah,
So I mean, it is super impressive.
that's very good.
Former Violet student, Allison.
So I just wanted that.
Well done.
State a couple things real quick. Something that we wanted to celebrate is our Thunder Chickens Running Club is back. This was just the North Walpole school that has been doing this, and we have 102 students in the building, and 65 students are participating. So they get bussed over to the Walpole Elementary School, walk up to the common, and just run for an hour. They get a little foot to put on their necklace, and they wear that around to show them when they meet their how many miles they've run. And then they did a fundraiser before so that all students get a t-shirt, and then that their cost for the run in Bellows Falls is covered. So then at the end, they do a big run together and celebrate their hard work and everything.
That's great.
And then something to know is that this month is our Pages for Pizza Reading Challenge. And each grade level, pre-K all the way up to 8th grade, read books, has a certain amount of books required, pages. And this isn't something that we're trying to, really watch for fluency or, how fast they can do it. It's to develop a love for reading and to create a routine the entire month. So if students finish it on day 2, they still have to wait all the way to the end of the month to get their free personal pan pizza at Diamonds. And we had a huge kickoff. Students are really excited for it. And our goal is to continue to just develop a routine. So after this month, students can continue to read at home and have discussions with their families.
So can I ask you something? I know, I remember back in the day, Kevin will remember this, his mother used to kiss a pig if the kids got to a certain level. Do you have any challenges for them?
I do everything. I dressed up as, I was in a pizza costume with a chef hat on the first day walking around doing it. I got a pie in the face because they raised a certain amount of
There
money
you go,
for the running club. And
Yep.
anything they want me to do, I'll do it. So I'm always willing to do everything. And then a concern was just the commissioners of the North Walpole just had some suggestions for the drop off and pick up at North Walpole School. They, I met with the fire department or fire chief, police chief, and a survey person to come over, look at the area. They made some suggestions on what to do. I met with Bill. We changed a couple things of how we would like to see it done. And then, so we're gonna get some quotes and everything and then come to you to see if that's something that we want to pursue.
You want me to talk or?
Kevin, will you be kissing a pig in your future? You're bringing back that pig?
I submitted mine, I have a couple others. I mentioned Rich Meek, who was named the state DFW Teacher of the Year for patriotism. He'll find out in April if he's made the national level. Just if you ever have a chance to visit his classroom, it's a living museum. I mean, he just takes a lot of pride. I heard him pounding like, what's he putting up now? But he just brings history alive and he's so deserving. Our staff would love to see you board members visit the schools, you know, set up a time and we can have you in. We'd love that. We celebrated reading and I read to every class at APS a couple weeks ago. We had a St. Patrick's Day dance at Vilas and concerns, it seems to be getting better, but the last couple of weeks we have had a lot of people out in coverage, you know, just sick, flu, whatever, coverage has been tricky. I also had 3 teachers go to this outstanding workshop they can't say enough about called Intentional Assessment Design, the Hampshire Learning Initiative. And what they really brought forward is this self-direction rubric where students really look at their own self-awareness, goal setting and planning, initiative and ownership, engaging and managing. And so it's something that we're taking a closer look at because they were very impressed with this workshop they went to. That's it.
I'm gonna talk about the reconfiguration.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll go. One thing to celebrate, so we're in full testing season, accountability testing. So Kyle O'Brien is our ELL teacher. He is finishing up access testing this week, so that will be done. We had been identified as on-site monitoring, but the state got it wrong. They thought that we had not tested a student last year, but we proved them wrong. And they took us off on-site monitoring. We got unofficial notification today. We'll be finishing up testing this week, so that's great news. One thing that I want you to know is we hosted OGAP training last year. That was a mathematical training. I told you about that earlier in the year. We did additive reasoning last year on New Hampshire Learning Initiative, which Gail just talked about, that they did training. They're going to host, they're going to do OGAP training again this summer. And we've been selected to host again. So we're going to do multiplicative reasoning this summer. And that's going to be in August. So I'm excited about that. One concern for me is just that we can get through with no more snow days. So,
Every parent is busy.
yeah.
Well, it's super easy to do. People get really mad when you do it, though.
Oh, sure. One thing to celebrate, the community activities fair was on March 8th. It was a big hit. It was an idea from Jessica Putnam, one of our counselors, and Amanda Chamberlain, but I'll tell you what, Alice Cable took that idea and made it a reality. She has got a tremendous can-do attitude. She organized people coming in for participants. Tons of positive feedback. It was well organized. I thought everything went really well. I know Misty helped out with some of that too. So thank you, Misty, for organizing that with her. People have asked to do it again next year. There's been some suggestions. Maybe we look at the fall because it was kind of cold outside. They thought it might be nice to do some outdoor pieces to it too. But overall, it was great. One thing to let you guys know is just, due to staffing shortages, increasing needs of students, I couldn't be more impressed with special education department in general. These guys, paraprofessionals, special education teachers, related services, they all have this can-do attitude. They come to work every day positive and they work with some of our most challenging students and they get the job done. So I'm super, super impressed with the people we have. The one concern is, to be honest, staff are a little anxious about the vote on Tuesday. Everybody's a little like, what's going to happen? So wait and see.
All right. And then we have the business report.
So, well, you guys have I'm doing good, the vouchers. I did send you an updated, just sent it today, an updated through 3/20 fiscal year, so you can see where we're at. The bottom line was that we have $2.6 million left right now. That is gonna change because I have gone through this, and as you can see, I've got some highlights that I need to look into and make sure everything's truly marked in here, and I think there's some things that need to be updated or at least encumbered that aren't. So, safely, we are going to have over $2 million at the end of this year, which is a lot of money in surplus to be coming into the end of the year. Brendan and I are gonna meet on that and maybe coming forward with some ideas to the board to see if you're willing to spend some of that money possibly on some projects that might need to be done. And hopefully we'll do that sooner rather
Beginning
than
of
later.
April,
Yeah,
first meeting.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
to have that conversation.
So I have a question in terms of the vouchers. Did we move forward with having people go in and look at the vouchers? Okay.
Well,
I
sort
went
of,
in and
because there's a lot of them here that
That you did not see.
did not, that were not part of that packet.
No,
no, because of, it's a second week. We were supposed to meet last week.
right,
That's
Okay,
what I
so-
figured anyway. Yeah.
right. But
All right.
I've had people in and out, so it's been a
I don't mind telling them every week.
few, it's been a rough month within my department for people being not in or out for. Anyways, it has been a very rough month in my, yes, it has, and hopefully we're on our way moving forward to complete recovery. Let's
So
hope.
people have been sick,
Yes,
very sick.
yeah, I can't.
Yeah, no, we
But
can't go
anyways,
into it.
yeah.
No, no.
There's a lot of stuff
A lot of
going on
stuff.
within my department. So, yeah,
I thought it was something I said, but they were all
I know, they just didn't like you. So we will get that into a more routine situation with you guys. Hopefully Thursdays are gonna be the best for me and for myself.
Yeah,
'cause
Thursdays
that's-
are not bad. for me.
Thursdays aren't bad for you. I know payroll sometimes is not done until later Thursday morning. It depends.
I can usually come later.
You can,
Yeah,
okay.
It's just because we happen to be in meeting with that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. So we just gotta figure it out. And I've gotta figure out with my staff, the problem is my staff has not all been in. So things have been kind of not as routine.
Okay.
How's that sound?
That's not, yeah,
We're trying.
not as ominous.
No, it just hasn't been as routine as it could be, but we will get there.
Kevin, you were trying to ask something.
Right. Is it possible to get this? I like the detail as well, but to get the subtotals, just all the subtotals in one report and just kind of look at those.
Yeah, I think I can get it to do that, just with the subtotals, that's all you want.
He wants the whole thing, but he
What's
wants.
the
to
whole
be able
thing,
to
but I just see the
subtotals.
subtotals. I don't have to page through to see all who is.
Oh,
who's up-
okay,
who's
well,
up
that
there.
would have to be a separate report, so I would.
That's fine.
Yeah, I could probably dump that into Excel for you and do that,
That's fine. That'd be-
so that would probably be the easiest way for me to do it.
Yeah. PDF doesn't really matter which one, just
Yep.
to see
Yep.
rolling the totals. just so I can- yeah, Overall picture.
And also just to reflect a little bit on this. I've gone through it and there's a lot of things that are very different that I had talked to you about in the budget process from the previous year. Where in some places you'll see that it looks like we're overspent in our budget by $50,000 on a person. Well, when I was building the new budget, I told you guys that, well, there was a person missing in that budget line. But then there are other lines where we had money put in that we hadn't used those lines in 3 years. So, there's a lot of variables in here, especially along the lines of personnel. So I've gone through them, but again, I'm finding like in, for instance, 403B. We didn't either put in enough, or there was some in other places that was too much, or there's just a lot of variables within it. The other thing I wanted to tell you that preliminary is that we are going to get our 18.2% on our health insurance increase. We have some people that are at 20% within our pool, even though we came in a little bit under, but because we're part of a pool, we are going to pay 18.2%. I am still looking at self-insured. I've got everything out there. We're putting it together to go out to see what we can get and see if we can get a better deal being self-insured again. I'm not holding out a lot of hope on that just because of the claims we've had. But we're gonna at least look into it and see what we can do.
Do you have a time?
I was looking at the word Shelley and.
Oh, I actually thought you said Jill, which is my sister. It happens all the time. Do you have a potential timeline? Have they given you a time that they said they would have to fall back to you, or at least an answer that whether they would or would not?
I haven't got it yet. We are working on pulling all the data together right now to send out, which once we send it out, it won't take very long. I would say in a month
Okay.
and a half or so, I should have something, or a month, I should have something. as a
Okay.
as to where.
So is this like a good time to do that? Cause I know we've
Yes.
kind of been talking about it since, I know at the budget committee, we talked about it quite a bit.
I think that, I don't know if we will have time to implement it in the 24 budget season, but it will give us an indication looking into the 25 budget season on which way we think we want to go. I think it's gonna be hard to implement for 24. Is it possible? Anything's possible, as long as I get all the information back and then make a decision fairly quickly.
We
So
just have to give them the information to give us an answer.
they have all the information. I've gotten all the information together. I put it into that person's hands right now.
Okay.
We just need to go down through it, and we met, I think it was last week I was down there, or 2 weeks ago I was down there. We met about it, so, was it last week, last Tuesday, I think?
Together.
No, it wasn't, it was a Tuesday.
Okay, so it was 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago that I went down and met it, so
Okay.
we're getting there.
I'm anxious.
Well, it's a big project to take on with the number of people we have. I'm not saying that it can't be done. It's just, we also know that we have to keep our programs or our policy. I'm doing good, our offerings the same. So that's where we have to make sure that everything we have is what we're putting out to bid for.
Okay.
So, yep.
All right. Anything else on the business report?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So, we wanted to pull something off the consent agenda. That was the.
Trying to put it under action agenda, so if we want to take the consent agenda first, then we can do.
No, let's do.
Action or, yeah, do you want to do
We
old
have,
business?
we have
first?
old business. I'm sorry, I missed the old business. Okay, okay. So the, Charleston attendance area survey.
Because it's smaller, I'm gonna sit with everyone. So the last time we met, we sent a survey out to the community, to the staff. Ultimately asking for pros and cons on 3 different options. The 3 different options were option 1, pre-K at North, K through 4 at CPS, 5 through 8 at the middle school or CMS. Option 2 would be pre-K through 3 at CPS, 4, 5, or I'm sorry, 3, 4 and CCS, 5 through 8 at CMS. And option 3 would be pre-K through 3, 4, 5 at North, and 5, 6, 7 up at
6, 7, 8.
6, 7, 8 at CMS. So with all that, ultimately, we did that survey just to staff, got a lot of good feedback. Ultimately, our next goal, which we presented here, was to reach out to the community. As of right now, we only had 71 responses, which when you really think of it is not bad. However, the responses were a range of different comments, from why are we doing this, to is this really needed, to some very, very good, thoughtful discussion. For example, somebody wrote in there, pre-K probably has a midday run, provides a little bit more flexibility with transportation. Option 1 would meet that need a little bit better. So taking into account everything that we have taken from the community and staff, Corey, myself, Dr. Manahan have met and ultimately have come up with a recommendation that we would like to put forward. The recommendation is, right now, we have a vote coming in about a week. There are 2 options on the table when it comes to the vote. The vote is either we are reducing a few staff members at a number of different areas within the attendance areas, and or we're at default, which means that we keep status quo. What was discussed was, if we end up with default, we would table this for 1 more year. We would keep having discussions. As you look through the PowerPoint that was sent to you, there was a lot of additional thoughts from the community that I think we need to answer in greater detail before we move forward with any of these options. However, as we know, staffing we're looking at staffing a little differently, coming from a number of different angles. And with that, we would like to propose option one, which is North Charlestown having the pre-K, which provides us the most flexibility when you're addressing some of the community needs. CPS K through 4, and then the middle school 5 through 8. And that would be if we were to look at the proposed budget, as you know, is less than the default budget. So we'd be going with option one if we end up in the proposed budget. So we wouldn't know that until next week's vote. But ultimately, that's what we're going to present to our staff. We have some work to do in no matter what option. In coming up with some finer detail points, not only concerns around the staff, but also around the community, and getting that information out to the community as soon as possible. So it is a wait and see game right this second. But in a very short period of time, we'll know what direction we're going and what steps we need to take to meet the needs of all our students.
So with the proposed budget, the cuts are of such a nature that we would be required to restructure in the CAA attendance area in order to meet the budgetary demands of that budget. There are no other ways that are reasonable or feasible to take that sum of money from our current operation. And so if the proposed budget passes, we would be forced to restructure. We're saying in that scenario, based on community feedback, staff feedback, what is most educationally appropriate for the kids we have today, knowing what will happen next year, it is to make CPS K4, CMS 5-8, and have pre-K up at North. We also recognize that there's articles 6 and 7, I think they are, on the warrant regarding the flexibility and authority back to the towns for how they address the number of schools in their towns. And so that could have an impact on future as well. If it's the default budget, just to reiterate the point Chris made, is that we would stay status quo for this year, figure out what happens with Articles 6 and 7, talk to our community at a greater extent, and plan a course of action moving forward that has a little bit more time and opportunity for feedback and planning than this does. I cannot emphasize enough, I've said this at previous board meetings, the turnaround to this, if the proposed budget passes on the 28th of March, the turnaround for this is almost incomprehensible for what this means for us to be able to execute for kids and for staff. And we're really, like, obviously we can't predict the weather, right? But it's going to be a really short turnaround that's going to create angst, and it's going to create some tension, and you just need to know that on the front side if we end up in a proposed budget state. Because that's going to be a real thing that we will have to manage through in our attendance area to help support staff and families through this process.
I think one more piece to take into account is some of the additional thoughts from the community. We've had these discussions. I've been here for 10 years and we've talked about restructuring. We've talked about looking at building additions, to look at adding on to certain buildings to make it more feasible with even the grade levels we have. So this has been talked about. At the same time, it's interesting to read some of the comments and see there's really a variance when you look at from a community's point of view, that some kind of knew that and understood that this was a process over a long period of time, and others saying, this is the first time I've ever heard about this. And that was interesting on my part because I've been one that communicates pretty openly to people. But granted, it is clear that not everybody has that same knowledge. So
would you be, that's the recommendation that we have, and what I think you would like, and I would certainly like, is for the board to say, yeah, that makes sense, you know, we agree. So that we know on Tuesday night depending on how they count the ballots here, or Wednesday morning, what we have to do. We're gonna have to boogie, as they say.
And is there any chance, because it's such a short turnaround, is there any chance with a $2 million surplus and 2 million in ESSER funds that we can fund the current situation until the following year where there's time to actually reenact or enact it?
But that's what
That would probably be.
Well, I don't think commissioner
Yeah.
kind of, I don't think you can legally.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well,
all right,
okay, well,
that's fine.
but
There was
Commissioner said
one
one
you
time he
could, I
said
think
you
it was
could.
ESSER 2 though.
Was it ESSER
Yeah.
two?
So
Okay.
they have this thing called supplant,
Yeah, yeah.
which is when you basically use other funds to cover
Yeah.
what they deem you should be paying for. And I don't think we can use ESSER.
Okay,
The other challenge you would have is that with this year's current money, you can't really use it for things next year.
okay,
Now, you could theoretically get, like, if you had equipment, get that if you did it quick. But it would be, theoretically, it could be quite challenging.
all right. So the other comment is there's gonna be a vote of the community, and the community is gonna tell us what they want. So to deal with angst and stuff, it's like, this is the world that we live in, okay? It's public education funded by the public. And if this is what the public tells us that they want to do, then everybody pulls up their bootstraps and this is what we do.
May I respectfully
Sure.
challenge that a little?
Yeah, you can disagree with
Just
that.
because we have 3 attendance areas, so we may have 1 or 2 attendance areas who collectively vote in one direction and a third attendance area collectively voting in a different direction. So there could plausibly be a scenario, for instance, where the Charlestown voters say we want the default budget, right? They don't pass the proposed budget, yet Alsted attendance area and Walpole attendance area says we want the proposed budget. And so Charlestown gets forced into a restructuring model because of the other 2 attendance areas. I'm not saying that's what will happen. I'm just saying that is a plausible outcome.
So if
to
that
the scenario.
plausibility that you propose comes to fruition.
Yeah.
Is it possible that you could talk to your administrators from the other towns that pass that budget and say, hey, could you guys give up a teacher so we don't have to?
Oh, sure. they'll do it.
I mean, you're talking like it's just Charlestown has to get rid of staff.
No, they're-
Why?
well, I
We're a
think it's
district.
4.
No, I think you bring up a good point that there's within all the communities, there is a reduction.
Yeah.
Of at least 1 staff member or 2, depending on the community that you're in. So it has the what Corey just presented could happen. I think it could also happen with the situation with Article 6 and 7.
Sure.
But at the same time, we thought that this was what would provide the most educationally sound support for students working within the confines that we have with either one budget or the other. We weren't going to look at, especially in this town of Charlestown, how big it is, we weren't looking at combination classrooms. We didn't think that was as feasible as, say, looking at the structure within our building system to make it that you could have 2 or instead of 3 in a potential grade level.
So trust you on that.
Wouldn't it, I mean, to me, what would be helpful if the board agrees is if the board and all of us kind of communicate that out, right? So basically, the voters have a choice. If they vote for the proposed, there are some changes that have to occur. Some revolve around the reduction of a staff member. Some revolve around some pretty big reconfiguration. If they choose the default, really what they're telling us, quote unquote, would be, at least for a year, keep the status quo while we talk about it more. That's sort of my thinking, if the board and others put it out that way, right? Like, we're saying, voter, this is your choice, really. and then you sort of see what they say. I don't know.
I mean, you would hope that that's what we put out at the delivered session. You would hope that the people that were in attendance would write it in the papers, would write it in their community papers, would write it on Facebook, would spread the word. The board has taken a position
Yeah.
of
True.
supporting the budget.
True. Yeah.
So
You're right.
I'm not gonna,
No,
in
you
good
can't.
faith, go out and say,
No, I get that.
look, this is what I support on paper, but
Yeah.
really, we can't do that, you know?
I mean, the flip side is also true. Charlestown voters could say, we want the proposed budget. Voters of the other two communities say we don't want the proposed budget, right? And so then Charlestown voters are gonna
They're
be in
stuck
a
with a bill.
scenario where they're still paying a bill for
Yeah.
something, even though they wanted a reconfiguration or reduction. So it's just there are unique dynamics in the way this particular SAU is structured that
No, you're right, but we all know that. We
Anyone across-
lived it.
Every year,
I've
that's
lived
what-
it my entire life.
we all know that when it's convenient to know that, right? Like, there's that piece of all of this human stuff too. So I guess my
And
bottom line is, we potentially have a pretty quick turnaround on some things, and so it'd be nice to know where the board's at with that. So we know, like Dr. Menon said, on the 28th, what we're doing.
I just wanted to say something first, and then that'll be your turn.
Sure.
Sure, I get to speak. I have a little bit of a concern because my understanding is that the concept of restructuring is beyond. I mean, if it's going to be good for kids, it should be beyond what budget passes. I mean, if it's important, if it makes sense to restructure, that doesn't matter what the budget is that gets passed. And yes, I think that the concept of that we could make it take a year of really studying it, that if we have more, if the budget doesn't pass, that is a valid point, but I don't want people who are, the public who is listening to this thinking that the only reason that we're looking at restructuring Charlestown is because of the budget, which it's kind of sounding like I'm sorry, but it seems like that's kind of what you're saying. And so I don't
I
think.
think it is right now, and I think that the piece that makes it sound like that right now is because we don't know what's going to happen in the Charlestown district in terms of Articles 6 and 7. So a lot of the feedback we got from the survey is what is the long-term solution? And without that piece of information, it's hard to be able to predict the longer term solution.
Right.
So is having all of fourth grade, all of Charlestown's fourth grade students together under one roof, best for kids? Absolutely.
Okay,
Hands down, absolutely. That is what's best for kids. Which roof that is, some of that is what makes this more of a budgetary conversation this year
Right.
than a what's best for kids conversation.
Yeah, an example would be maybe through the conversation, you find out that really want to have pre-K and K
Mhm,
under, let's say, North Charlestown,
mhm.
and keep the others, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, whatever, 1, 2, 4.
1 through 15, yeah.
I don't think anyone among us anyways thinks that the current model is educationally best for kids.
Right, okay.
Well, that was exactly what I wanted to talk about because those people sitting in the room, we've talked about this for years.
Mhm.
The community actually is out there saying, you've been talking about this for years. Why are we continuing to talk? They want to see us move forward in a more educationally sound and financially efficient way. Like, it's time. They feel like they have spoken over the last 10 years. That's what prompted things like the withdrawal study and all of these things. They want to see us start doing things in a fiscally responsible and educationally sound way.
Mhm.
And so to me, it doesn't matter so much what the budget vote is. We will get either one, but this is what is best for students. And I think that has been made clear time and time again. I would not be comfortable not making a change.
Shelley had her hand up. as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. There it is. Yeah, I have it on here so I can see. Yes, Shelley?
So I appreciate the conversations that we're having, but I'm also kind of hearing what Corey and Chris are saying in the sense that because of what may happen on Tuesday, there is a quick turnaround. I would like to see the board react so the weight isn't put fully on Corey and Chris if this was to go about. Like, the board hasn't had any conversations with Charlestown. We haven't had any forums, we haven't had any open things, and we've all have been insanely busy with a whole bunch of things. But if it's decided that this is the route we're gonna go, whether we decided on Tuesday with a vote or whether we decided in general, I think we need to start having conversations with the community in Charlestown as a board or as an administration or as both of us together. I know what Alyssa's saying, but I also know what the reaction was to the survey. And there is a whole lot of people that had no clue that these discussions were taking place. And inks is not even the term that I would use, because I got more than enough phone calls of, what are we doing? So I can imagine the conversations that Corey and Chris had when the survey came out. So I'd like to support our administrators in whichever way the vote goes or whichever way the administration wishes to move forward. And I would like to be there to support them. And if that means we have to be on the front lines with them in the community, we probably should. And I don't mean front lines as in a bad way, but you know, the community is going to want to talk about this. They're going to have questions, and there's going to be people who are not overly happy, and it shouldn't just fall on the SAU and the administration to take the brunt of that. That's all.
I agree with you, Shelley. I think that it is important for, you know, for us to say, to make a statement on this, you know, that we're in support or not in support, or, you know, but,
I don't know a single board member who would not be in the support of the administration's recommendation.
right.
And I've never seen a board go against an educational decision by the administration. So I mean, it's a tough situation, but it should be clear to you that we are behind you. At least I'm pretty sure we are.
And I, one of the things that I stressed in one of the site-based meetings was the Articles 6 and 7 that are now, in my opinion, gonna open up real conversation of what's gonna happen in the next year or two.
Mhm.
And honestly, we've had discussion for 10 years.
Yeah, you
But
gotta
it was
start.
always hypothetical, because there was always something higher that we needed to address before we could have real open, honest dialogue on, okay, what is 5 years from now gonna look like? What is
Right.
10 years gonna look like?
Right.
And with that on the warrant, people really are gonna have those honest discussions. It's not gonna be anymore, well, the articles of agreement, or that there was always a sticking point to every conversation. And now that is going to ultimately, theoretically, could be eliminated, and it's a lot of them in here. When you look at the 71 responses, why aren't you looking at just 2 campuses? Why aren't you looking at,
Well, yeah, exactly.
there's- put an addition on a school? There's a lot of hypothetical that have been, that were in here. But again, you can't do that instantly either.
Right.
So-
Yeah, adding an addition is a huge.
That on top of, even with the articles, you have to have north.
You still need the
You need to
space.
have, you need to use that space next year. The year after can look a little different. So it is a process that we have to kind of move through. And there are gonna be future discussions, but we just wanted the support of the board in that. We're not saying, we know educationally that option 1, or the option of having all the schools under each grade level under one roof is most beneficial. The collective efficacy with teachers is the #1 driving factor in student performance. And for us to do that, they need to be under one roof. So
So on that note, does that offer some comfort to the angst that they're feeling?
I'll say
Like when-
no. There are other pieces that it's a very emotional climate coming out of not only COVID, but withdrawal out of. There's a lot of
There's a
pieces
lot of
being
stuff going
factored
on.
into a decision they don't have control over, and that's hard. Change is hard to begin with, but when they don't have a whole lot of control over it, it makes it even more difficult. So. That's kind of what we're
One of
seeing.
the
They
things
do have control on
I've been-
Tuesday. Mhm.
I've been doing a
They're-
kind of a
they're
little side
Yeah,
conversation with Kevin here, just on whether we should do like a straw poll of the board for that. Yes, we are in support, just to give you that, because I'm hearing you saying you'd like to hear us say that. But you had a concern,
Which is hard to do since we don't have a budget.
we don't have a budget.
It's,
Can I also say there's another probably reason why there's angst? April 15th is contracts. So that's the
We
big
know
thing
that,
with
we
this
know
go
that.
around. I
we
just
know
was,
that. And our next meeting after that, our next meeting wouldn't be until the 10th, which is not enough time.
Not enough time, no.
So.
Conversation.
No, it's not enough.
Yeah.
Contracts are not, they're April 15th, not April 1st.
No, they have, law is they have to have them by April 15th.
Okay.
We could have gotten them to them earlier.
Oh,
But it's
well, that
also
makes me
feel a little
iffy at the moment.
and it's also on our side, in our department as well. There's a lot of anxiety right now around contracts, just
Yes.
because we now only have 2 weeks prior to, depending on what the vote is for people, if we're gonna get raises or we're not. There's a whole nother side of it on our side over here.
No.
There's that part of it too.
The ripping
So,
thing and.
yeah, there's a
the rip
lot
line,
to
The
it.
rip list. and-
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's teachers, like, it's just that first level of teachers, but there's a lot of them.
Well, and they would be theoretically affected the most by proposed versus
Right.
default, unless
Plus
the
articles,
decision is no matter what, we're going ahead.
So
And
what you
honestly-
guys, what I'm hearing you guys saying right now is that if the budget, if we go with the default budget, then the recommendation, y'all's recommendation is that we continue studying it for 1 year and then look at doing the change. But if we go with the proposed budget, that we go with the change starting right away. Is that,
Option one.
is that like cutting it down?
To put it
the-
simply, yes.
To the brass
But next-
tacks?
For example, next year, maybe. Depending on how 6 and 7 work out, maybe you can fit it all in.
Right.
2 campuses.
I imagine
versus
you'll continue, you'll continue
You-
studying,
you-
even if we did the change next year, you'd continue studying it to see whether there needed to be tweaks to that change.
Correct.
Yeah, because, yeah. So,
Well, we're always under the constraint of, the vote is at the end of March, and the contracts are being in April, so if we try to close a school, we have to then, just, we don't know what we're doing.
Well,
So
you
we
know
get to-
Well, we won't be closing the school next year.
I know. So if they, you just talked about going, maybe if 6 and 7 pass, then maybe they start to look at that, and maybe, it's just.
we'll have
always
another,
takes-
we'll have another rush next
It's always,
spring,
yeah,
but yeah.
right, it's always a short time period.
So, and I think that one of the things that I think is good is that we do have some things about the Articles of Agreement on the ballot this year, which is what people have been asking for years and years. So there is a chance for people to start voting about changes to the Articles of Agreement. And I give Shelley and Alyssa and, folks who've been really pushing for getting, like, we gotta do this. I give you a lot of credit for shoving us forward with that, so.
Runaway train, if we're not careful.
Yeah, right. And we don't want it to get, you get something rolling and then it rolls over you, you don't want that to happen either, so. But, yes, go
Another
ahead.
benefit is we still haven't dealt with, we had a parent come to us concerned about where you live, depends on which school you go to, there's no particular line. We still haven't dealt with that either. So, and this proposal does fix
It
that
fixes that
problem,
problem,
because
yeah.
there's no longer a line. Everybody goes to one or the other now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
They really become,
Huh?
they really become the Charlestown community
Right.
schools. as opposed
And when
to-
you look at the community and staff feedback, the pros for option one far outweigh any other option. Just because of more of the flexibility with some of the major questions were transportation. And that pre-K, it doesn't eliminate transportation, but there's a midday run anyways. There's a lot of the concerns they had with gym space and other configurations, all were addressed within option one, where some of the other options kind of lended themselves to not using the buildings as well as they could be used if you set it up this way.
So. Sorry.
What happened, you guys? It's like ping pong ball here. Go ahead.
I'll ask a quick question, then, thank you. No, never. I'm gonna phrase it. With the overwhelming support from the parents and the teachers in terms of pros and cons, what is the pro from you for waiting, other than perhaps that it would be more of a shock to whichever teachers do not have that position?
I think that
Because it affects what, two positions in Charleston?
it reduces 2 positions in Charlestown.
And
It
moves
affects
4.
every position in Charlestown.
Right, because people are gonna move schools, yeah.
People would be moving schools, and by effects,
classrooms
some
and
positive,
things like
some negative, like it's not all one or the other, right? And so in terms of weighting, it's just, some things to consider are, what do we do with pre-K? What, does North Charlestown School close completely? Does, if you wait a year regardless closing, right? Are there, maybe other transportation things that we haven't fully worked the bugs out of yet?
Yes.
So I think it's some of those types of questions and conversations to be had to just be able to move forward with a little bit more widespread buy-in. It's like, do you want to peel the Band-Aid off slowly or just rip it off and be done? There's some benefits potentially to both. I think also, having an understanding of what we do with the middle school behavior program can be a factor in these conversations. If we're looking at space concerns, what does that really look like when it plays out? In order to make, for instance, 5th through 8th grade fit in our current Charlestown Middle School, there's gonna have to be some folks uncomfortable. So there's just kind of bigger ticket type things that we would potentially want to consider.
But they've been considered, and they are essentially delaying the inevitable because they are going to happen. Some sort of change. The status quo we know is not educationally sound, so we know some changes.
Some change should happen.
So that's.
I think as a
So-
board,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
just being prepared, board and the administration, it reminds me, I don't know, I know you said you don't, but Emmanuel Macron, do you guys know the French president recently said, I'm changing the retirement age
Oh,
from
yeah.
62 to
Oh, wow.
64.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a sound decision? Probably. I mean, to retire at 62 would be awesome, but as a functional approach to longevity, it's a challenge. People have lost their minds.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so you just have to be mentally prepared that even though something is sound,
Right.
right?
Doesn't necessarily.
There's the emotional part, there's the historical part, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I just can't get past the kids that haven't had the opportunities that they should have. And that's
Yeah,
the last
no,
thing I'm gonna say about that.
absolutely, yeah.
So. But that's always gonna happen.
Correct.
If we wait a year, that's
That is
still gonna
full
happen.
bias.
It's still gonna
Yeah,
happen.
it's a thing.
So I agree with Alyssa. I think that if this is educationally sound, if this makes sense, that we should be doing it anyway, depending on, we don't, just because we're given money, doesn't mean we have to spend the money. So I'm with Alyssa, I think we should be doing this sooner than later.
Well, and if we did it sooner than later, then we could spend the time throughout. And just because it's summer doesn't mean that we can't have meetings in the in the towns and, and have people talking about it and, really helping people to understand what it is, how it's going to, why it's better, how it's more educationally sound, all of those things, so that people do feel as if they've been able to have a voice and, how, and be able to say, well, what about this and what about that? And because anytime you make a change like this, you are going to find little bits and pieces that no matter how in-depth you've studied, there's always going to be angst and difficulty as you make the change. So, and stuff that you're like, oh, didn't even think about that, So, in the interest of time and also just getting us, being able to move us forward, I would like to just do a quick straw poll of where people on the board are at in terms of do we want to support the option one was the one?
So option one, yes.
Option one as being the option that we would move towards and that we would be looking at doing it for going ahead and doing it for next year.
Regardless.
Regardless.
So why straw poll and not a vote, if you don't mind?
I don't, yeah.
If we're gonna do it
I think
regardless-
things
if we're
could
gonna do it-
change
if
and
we're
the
gonna do it
board
regardless-
could change too.
If we're gonna do it regardless, I mean, I would like the data from the voting to kind of, to say, no, the voters of Charlestown did not support the budget. I'd really like to do the real vote after the budget to see, look at the town's numbers to make a better educated or better informed decision. So we can look at it town by town and kind of suss out, are the voters of Charlestown supporting this? Do they want the budget to be decreased, right? That's why I would want to wait. I would like us to think about holding us. We can do the straw poll now if you want to, but I'd like to see us more doing a special
Like a
meeting
special meeting after the
right
vote.
after the vote, probably the Thursday, the 30th or something. We can.
And just have that be the thing we talk about.
I think that's the only thing on the
That's the
agenda.
only thing on the agenda.
You can kick me later, but doesn't that contradict what you just said in terms of, like, if it's educationally sound and we support doing it no matter what, why does the vote matter?
That's exactly where I stand. If
Sorry.
this is educationally sound, then I say we do it now. Or if the Charlestown voters vote to delay this a year, fine, but we let the Charlestown voters know that this is going to happen next year. It's either going to happen this coming year
It's the
or the
same,
year after. And
either,
it's definitely, that train is moving forward. It's going to happen. It's better for your kids. This new configuration, this new restructuring is better for your kids. It's really the bottom line that you need to know about. That's the one piece that you need to know about. It's better for the kids. If you sell it that way, it'll be bought. And to me, it's like this either happens immediately because our budget got cut, or it happens a year later. You've got a little bit more time to do the details and figure out and let everybody know this is exactly what's gonna happen. What would that be, 24, 25? I mean, either way, we should move forward with the restructure.
Let's actually make a motion,
Okay.
and then we will know which way we're going. And then we can move, we can make a motion, and then if we vote it down, we'll another thing to do. So I make a motion that we accept
Option one.
option one. Option one, no matter. Help me with wording.
The outcome of
The outcome of the vote on,
Regardless.
regardless of the outcome on the vote on the 28th.
regarding the budget,
Regarding the budget, yes.
I second that.
Okay,
Quick
so
discussion.
now we can discuss.
I just got one question for these guys. You heard the motion. Is that what you would recommend? Or would you stick to your status quo if the budget fails?
I think we can reallocate if it's a default budget, reallocate positions and look at it a little differently. It does make the most educational sense. Ripping off the Band-Aid is an option. I guess we're looking for
So if we went,
support from.
if we went with, say, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm very bad at interrupting. If we went with, if we say that we're in support of, I mean, it sounded like people are in support of option one. Just, and if we went ahead and say that the budget doesn't pass and we do have that extra money, is there an absolute reason that we couldn't not cut those teaching positions and just put, is there no room for being able to have those positions?
So in my building, it would come down to space. I
Down
could
to
have
space. Okay.
everybody,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I
Yeah.
can't have every position filled and
With all of those
be in
kids.
charge. In
I would reallocate
class.
to interventionists in a heartbeat. So I will take his position and mine
Did they know
and
music?
make them interventionists.
Right, that's.
Just
what I'm
like
saying.
kids.
That's what
Oh,
I love
okay.
that.
I was-
idea.
That's great.
Repurpose those positions.
That's exactly what I
Yeah.
was just saying is
Yeah.
reallocate.
Yeah.
into
Yeah,
different positions.
reallocate.
Yeah, so that, so they wouldn't be losing their,
No.
people wouldn't be losing their position, the positions wouldn't disappear, but what, maybe what the job was
Correct.
would
Yeah.
look different.
So maybe interventions.
Very
good.
Right.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table, and it's been seconded. Do we have further discussion on that? Does everyone understand what the motion is?
Could you read that back to us, Ms.
Yep.
Motion is to accept option one, regardless of the outcome of the budget on March 28th.
We may want to
So-
put in there.
I have so this is, sorry. So this is regardless of having any input other than the 71 people that did the survey. Is that what we're saying?
That would,
Yes.
yes, that is what we're saying. I mean, there
So
would
the
be,
70
there would be continuing discussion on how it was gonna happen and helping people to understand the educational soundness of it and, you know, like selling it, but yeah, we would go based on the teacher input and the 71 people who did the survey.
And if you remember there was no other option, like keep it status quo was not a option on
On the
pros
survey.
and cons, because we're in that model currently.
Right.
We don't need pros and cons. And
Right.
It wasn't I wouldn't say a popular, it wasn't what option is best based on what you know. It's the pros and cons of each.
Well, status quo is not a restructure.
Correct.
Did anybody put in the bottom that they would like to stay exactly as we are?
Yeah,
Was it a significant?
I can't, without going through,
It'd be interesting also to know which part of town, because if it's not really affecting them, then it wouldn't
Did you
matter.
have to put your address in there too?
No, there was
so
no,
it's completely anonymous.
Right.
Able to tell that.
71 out of what, 4,000 registered voters?
well, but you only sent it to parents, right? So.
Well, it
parents
ended
have-
up on Facebook, so when you really.
No,
look at it-
this was open to everybody.
Yeah.
Because it ended up, as Chris said, it ended up on Facebook, so anybody could have done it. Because it was slated as a community survey, not a parent survey.
We just want you to have all the information. I'm not.
Okay. So do we want to vote or is there more discussion to be had?
I'd like to hear the new motion.
All right. How about it? Let's get down.
To accept restructuring option number one to Charlestown attendance area as follows, and then I listed PK North Charlestown, K4, CPS 5-8, CMS, regardless of the outcome of the vote on the budget, March 28th. That's what I'm.
March 28th vote on the budget, and then you could say, what is that, Article 2?
That's if the powers that be let us vote on the 20th.
Correct.
Could snow.
Well, that could be a change to the minute that.
We
our
get another
next
3 feet of snow.
We're not going.
I hope not. All right,
Thank you.
are you ready? Or is everyone?
I am in favor of this motion. I'm the first person.
Okay, so Joe is, yeah, in
Joe's a
favor.
yes.
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Alyssa, yes.
Kevin, yes.
Shelley,
Yeah,
was that a yes? Did your vote
Yes.
yes or? Yeah, okay,
yes.
all right. All right, so you have the vote from the board.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you both.
thank you for all of the thought process that's gone into it so far. It's changes.
They were a
changes
lot
hard.
taller before this started.
I feel like I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Change is hard.
Yeah, and a lot of the angst is directed towards them, so.
If they didn't.
appreciate
Well, now
your
they can
support.
say,
Yeah.
hey,
Well, I think that's.
look at your board.
I think that's helpful. I think that's very helpful. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
And,
So-
you know, I don't know, you guys on the board, Sarah's been around a while, and you're always gonna have at least a third of the population mad at you
Oh, yeah.
about something.
Yeah.
It's part of.
Depends
it's
on the
part of this
issue.
job.
So just get used to it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It is what it is. All right. So now we're ready to move to the consent agenda and we wanted to move, oh, you already moved it off. Okay, I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait, I don't see it because you
I
already
didn't
moved
move
it
it,
up
I didn't move it off the agenda, but I moved
Okay.
it in my minutes.
in your minutes, okay. So,
We want to do
I
the,
move to accept the consent agenda with the thing missing.
yes.
With the alternative school, middle school alternative education program approval missing.
okay,
Seconded,
seconded, all right. Joe?
Yes.
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 Kevin, yes.
Shelley?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, okay. So I don't have to vote. All right. So now, let's see, that was including all of those things. So now we need to, now we're gonna talk about the alternative middle school program.
Do you want a motion to accept the
Yes.
consent agenda without it first?
We did,
We just
we just did that. You just
Right.
voted on that. That's what you did, yes on.
So we have a motion, right?
Do you
Yeah.
want a motion?
I make
I
a
wanna-
motion to approve the middle school alternative education program.
Thank you.
Uh,
And are you
I
gonna
second that, yes, please.
All right. So discussion on the alternative middle school program.
Do we need to state that those, that it's approval based on it coming from ESSER funds?
Do we,
Do we need, I mean,
that with the,
Well, you could say as presented, right? And that's how it was presented.
That was how it was
yeah, that doesn't make ESSER funds, as long as we're saying it's coming out of ESSER funds and we're not.
Well, yeah, we're gonna come back and if it's, you know, it's gonna be, if it can't be funded through ESSER, we're gonna come back and be like, we can't
uh-oh,
pay this and we can't
Yeah.
go forward. But we should know that prior to its implementation. We just have to put in the grant and have them,
say yes to it, yeah.
Well, and finding a location.
well, that
Yeah,
would be a
he's
key
a-
too.
yeah.
but, you know,
I need that.
Yeah.
It's just stuff. not money.
How about to accept the proposal for a middle school alternative, or what are we calling it? I have middle school alternative program. are we-
alternative education for middle school.
As presented, and then we have to revisit it.
Okay. So is there discussion on that or are we ready to move it to a vote?
I'm ready to
I'm
vote.
ready.
Okay, all right, Joe,
Yes.
Andy, yes.
Alyssa, yes.
Kevin, yes.
Shelley,
Absolutely.
all right,
Yes.
yes. All right,
Thank you.
what?
You didn't.
Oh,
Thank you.
it is yes, true.
It's a great idea.
We don't have to break, yeah. No ties to break, so that's good, okay. All right. So, oh, we're at the end. Treasurer's report? Is
I
everybody,
signed it.
okay?
All the other
It's
ones that
moving
were
around.
added to it?
Oh, the pile you gave me, didn't have, I don't think it was this big.
Mm-mm. I need time of this. so I-
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're,
Do we want to not accept the treasurer's report? Here. We want to hold it until the next meeting?
Since we're meeting just on Monday. I
How
think
many
that's a good idea.
signatures do you need on?
Yeah,
Oh.
next Monday, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Just a week.
I'm not gonna have four, Joe.
Let's hold it.
okay, so we're gonna
We can
hold
just
it.
hold
You
it.
can hold
Yeah,
it.
we'll table it and hold it and we'll.
Yeah.
You guys can get in and take a look at it and,
Thank you.
okay. All right,
Perfect.
good.
you in?
So-
Non-public, right?
Yes, please.
Okay,
So make a motion to go into non-public session, RSA two, whatever,
91A?
yeah.
Actually have a couple of things. We're gonna have the A,
And
but we're also gonna have, I think you have some content.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Mary,
Fees,
you in Thursday,
contracts.
so stopping? Yeah. What time
No,
is
see, I
it?
was thinking it would be
Like
a
two? I'm free all day,
promotion compensation.
as long as it's before
Just
three.
the
to make
ANC.
sure.
okay.
ANC,
ANC.
ANC,
All day first. Okay.
It's on my page.
and that
Well,
will,
thank you, administrators. You guys are doing a really good job.
much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Exactly. You're doing a great job. We'll see you at 6:00.
Well, I'm gonna go listen to the parent thing. at
Yeah.
Charlestown tomorrow,
I'll be
so
there.
I'll see what they have to say.
yeah. Thank you, guys. And I apologize for being late. I was racing up here from Connecticut. I was with my father-in-law.